And here we are with initial designer Cora Georgiou and associate initial designer Minty Fresh Leo. You want to? Yeah, both. Joining us here in Coin Concede to talk about Castle Nathria, which is cool. I did, after, Cora, you led the set. After playing 5.5 hours of Nathria today, I know who the murderer is.
You
It's you,
do?
because you killed it.
Oh,
Yeah.
shucks.
And the whole team, of course. But yeah, had tremendous amount of fun, a lot of surprises. So we have some questions for you. Looking at the design of the set, questions for both of you. And the first one, well, we're gonna go back in time to Stormwind because this set, you notice, has a lot of techie cards, some Theatar and friends, some steam cleaning. There are a lot of elements in the set that seem to be responses to the Stormwind environment and the reception around that. Was this set being developed in initial when Stormwind went live? And how did it influence your designs on both the micro level per card and the big picture perspective and how the set should feel?
Yes. So we tend to work about a year ahead. So when we started on this set, the newest set would have been United in Stormwind, which is why you're correct. Some of this set does feel like it's a reaction and a response to the meta and the cards from United in Stormwind. Specifically, we knew quest lines were very good. We knew combo decks were very powerful. And that was largely what the meta was when we started building out this set. So that's why we went into it very early on with the goal of let's do something different. We know quest lines are going to be here for a while. Let's make sure that the meta a year from now doesn't feel like the meta right now. And that's why we had the goal of, minion centric combat board based gameplay. But yeah, also, a card like Steam Cleaner was intended to be a response to Ignite because Ignite was very, very powerful at the time. And we knew that the card wouldn't be out for quite some time, but we figured we might as well make it anyway. There's a chance that Ignite is still playable. It is still playable. It's just not very dominant anymore. And it just so happened that Lady Prestor and Kazakusan are the new thing that you would like to nuke from the deck. So it still has plenty of targets, and that worked out quite well.
And I think going off of that a little bit, one thing that Cora said is, we work a year ahead, and so I think Castle Nathria is you notice a lot of the like explicit design choices that are kind of in response to some of the things you've seen in Stormwind. But I think if you notice in like Alterac Valley and Voyage to the Sunken City, we still did try to incentivize board-based gameplay and try to get a lot more gameplay out of playing minions. But because this is the first set that we got to basically not entirely start to finish, but a huge chunk of the development of this expansion was after Stormwind had launched. We kind of got to take a bigger piece of the pie to do what we wanted to do in response.
I will also say, though, just in regard to tech cards, this set did not have a lot of tech cards initially. And at one point when we were in final design, honestly, it was probably Board Control and Gallon who were like, we need some tech cards. This set doesn't really have any. And that's sort of where cards like Steam Cleaner, Muck Plumber sort of came into play, just an effort to make a couple of tech cards that could be good responses to things that were currently in the meta, but that just also could be sort of blanket responses to things we would make in the future. We just like to have a couple of them in every set.
When you
Although
do
shout
that,
out,
does that end up like, is that something that you're pulling forward from future sets, or is it something you're just kind of making up at, late in the design cycle?
Just later in the design cycle. Now the design cycle is about 32 weeks long. It's 16 weeks initial, 16 weeks final, and then we still have many, many months before the set actually releases. So we still have lots of design time in the next several sets to be able to go back and respond with the previous set if there are things that we want to change. We have lots of time to do that. So this was later in the design cycle that these tech cards came into play, but still, probably 5-6 months ago now.
I do want to give a special shout out to Theatar, which that text box stuck since the moment Cora put it in the sheet all the way until now.
It did used to be 3 mana though, so they nerfed it right at the end. But I thought the text box was fun.
It's more fun now that the card costs 4.
I think so, probably.
Well, there's been a sort of ongoing discussion since I think sort of Stormwind, and then honestly maybe even all the way back to Barons, but just about control decks and board-based metas. And it seemed like it really came to a fruition in Voyage. So games have been feeling pretty drawn out and value heavy, and control decks have been powerful multiple times. We saw the rise and fall of Control Warrior with Shield Shatter, and then Quest Priest more recently. So was this an intentional design from your team for this meta, and or for four set metas in general? And have you been surprised at all of the reaction from players as to the current state of the game?
I think to an extent, it was intentional. Like in an ideal world, right? An expansion has something for everybody to play. There's a combo deck that you can play. There's an aggro deck, control deck, whatever. There's something for everyone. But I think the reality is that each expansion has its own flavor of meta. Like decks pop up that we didn't really like realize would be that exact deck list until somebody finds it, and then it gets popularized, right? I think in Stormwind, there was a lot of combo decks. There was a lot of power directly from hand. So I think in order to kind of create a meta game where there were more value decks and slower decks, we did go into the design thinking, all right, let's try to make these decks really something special.
Yeah, I think it was more so just an effort to incentivize variety, to make sure that there was something for every flavor of player. And that has resulted in a bit of a slower meta. Obviously, cards like Prince Renethal were more of a direct attempt at making something different happen. And I do think that the response to that largely has been positive, just because Hearthstone has been around for so long that anytime we're able to put something into the game that players haven't experienced before in any form, I think that's really cool for them. Makes it feel like you're playing a new game, even though you've been playing it for many years. So that definitely had a bit of an impact on making games take a little bit longer, making decks a little bit slower, but not a negative impact, I would say. I think it's overall been pretty positive.
And Nathria, again, very early impressions. Maybe the speed of the meta will shift a little bit from what I've seen so far.
Which direction?
Not slower. The other way.
So you're saying the speed is going to improve?
I don't think it's a very slow set, for the record. I think we're trying to build decks that can fight on board, but also decks that can make use of the infuse keyword, which requires a certain number of minions to die. And if all of those minions are big minions, you're not going to get your infuse payoffs. So there had to be a certain amount of sort of tempo-oriented, token-style, mid-rangey decks, which is something that we pushed in quite a few classes like Warlock and Paladin, Hunter. And I think largely those decks are going to be pretty good. So I think you are going to see maybe a little bit of a faster meta. You then have the Renethal decks to sort of offset things. Maybe the control decks take on that strategy. But the ideal meta just then is balance, right? We have the control decks to offset the aggro decks. You maybe still have some of those questline decks in the mix. Priest with Prince Renethal has been doing quite well. So that's ultimately what we want to see.
Yeah, Infuse stood out to me when even just reading it, but also playing it. I mean, it's really thematic for what you're dealing with right now. The Anima Infusion and the VFX team did a really great job with a little red glow, and then the big red, like, I don't know what to call it, sploosh when it fully transforms. But it's also, like you said, it encourages players to play minions, but it doesn't have to do that the same way. It's trying to accomplish multiple things. I look at Plot of Sin, and I look at Clean the Scene. They both have the word infuse on them, but that's not the same kind of card there. So, I mean, what are your big picture plans and hopes for Infuse, and any designs that really stand out to you as being memorable in development, or just cool cards that you like a lot internally?
And I think speaking to Infuse generally, I think like one of the goals of the keyword was definitely like, let's incentivize putting lots of minions on the board. And when we ended up landing on this version of Infuse, we liked it a bunch, and we really wanted to see how far it could go in all of the classes. I think the thing is there is, Clean the Scene and Priest. Priest doesn't usually go super wide. They don't usually summon a lot of tokens, whereas Druid, that's very much so a lot more realistic. I think like that comparison of Plot of Sin versus Clean the Scene, it's just a matter of let's play to each of the class's strengths, but putting the infuse spin on it. I think with Clean the Scene, it has a relatively low infuse count compared to some of the other infuse cards, and That's just because priests, they are going to be playing minions, but they're not going to be playing as many as druid will, right?
Yeah, and you look at Plot of Sin, and 5 infuse for that effect seems like it's very high, but for druid, that's not a very high requirement. Realistically, that's like a priest 2 or 3 requirement. So it was important for us that the class specific infuse cards feel like they are catering to those classes' strengths rather than necessarily, being the same fairness across the board. Just because, classes like warrior and priest are going to have a harder time. And infuse, Leo actually was really really important in the infuse process, just because infuse used to be such a different keyword for quite a long time. Infuse actually was a different resource, or it would transform your mana crystals into like red mana, and then you would be able to spend the red mana, and it was really cool, but the gameplay wasn't great. It was super thematic, but ultimately the payoff didn't do what we wanted it to do. So finding this current version and then being able to figure out how this keyword works across all of the classes was a pretty difficult process. And ultimately, I'm a little sad that we don't have a double-digit infuse in the set. I really, really wanted Denathrius to be like this big infused 10 giant bomb effect. But I think at the end of the day, just from watching the Theory Crash streams, you're going to be infusing Denathrius for more than 10 a lot of the time. So I think he probably fits the bill.
Yeah, I think a version that was just Sire 10 Athreus would have been a lot less flexible.
So something that stands out, especially as you're starting to like review both this set and the last one, is that there are a lot of what have been called like card packages that are starting to come up in a bunch of the class cards. So relics, skeletons, imps in this set, for example. And what's the goal in designing a package versus a collection of standalone cards? And is there any worry that sometimes when these are designed as much of a package as they are, that they put deck building a little bit too much on rails? And when you're doing those types of design, do you approach that any differently than say when you're just approaching a standalone card?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's definitely something that I've seen a lot of conversation about regarding this set, because this set is particularly package heavy. And that is something that we went into the set. We wanted the suspects, the locations, and the covenant spells ideally to work together in the same deck. They don't across all of the classes. It didn't work out perfectly, but a lot of the time you'll see like Cecily, Convoke the Spirits, and the Hedge Maze. Probably you put them in the same ramp druid style of deck. So that naturally lended itself to some card packages within classes. And we definitely have those in, Imp Warlock. The relics are very isolated to this set. The volatile skeletons are quite isolated to this set. But it was important to us that we had classes that didn't necessarily have those packages, so that players could still have deck building experiences. Like Warrior, for instance. Warrior is much sort of a looser theme this time around. They have some of the damaged package. They have a little bit of hand buff, but it's not like volatile skeletons, for instance. And that really, at the end of the day, just comes down to us needing to cater to all different types of players. And I think what the packages do offer us is a really easy way to build a brand new deck when the set comes out. A lot of the decks that you see the streamers playing in the theory crafting live streams are like these decks that have these new packages of cards, because it's really easy to envision what the deck could look like, what the power pieces are. And I think that's great, but it's also really fun for us to sort of seed pieces that are just sort of power pieces that don't necessarily make a brand new deck, but that allow us to build up a deck across time. So it's important that we have a balance of that. But yeah, this set is certainly more package heavy than most sets. That's not to say that that's like a design direction that we're going in. That's not something that we're like saying we're going to do more of going forward. It was just sort of something that we wanted to try this time around. I don't think it was necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that something I personally wanted to try is maybe in each class, we do one new deck for the set, and then we do pick up some more support for previous sets, or seed some more stuff for future sets. I think that's something that we haven't done as much of in the past, and I'm curious how that would go over as well. But I think it's just important for us to try new things and see what players like, and that's not always easy to do when you only have 10 cards in a class to do it with. But it's definitely something that we've talked about.
Yeah, it was interesting to me when playing today. I called out like the DH relic specifically. That's not a deck. That's some cards, but I had 4 different relic decks built, and then I lost to a 5th one that played almost none of the same cards except for the relics. It was a really cool Team Solar replay. It was all Demon Hunter tokens. The only minions in the deck were 2 Urzul Giants, Denathrius, and some other cool card. It was expensive. Zymox. Zymox. Yep. And they got them with Abyssal Depths, which I like, one of the best revealed cards in history. So it was just a really interesting and different take on the archetype, as opposed to what I had with Fel or Aggro or Death Rattle Demon Hunter. So, a package doesn't have to necessarily be something that doesn't have options.
And I think like my go-to example is in Voyage to the Sunken City for Warlock. We have the Murloc Warlock and we have Abyssal Curses. I think Murloc Warlock, that's a deck, right? You kind of want to just be playing all the Murlocs you can, but I've seen like a bunch of different variations of the Abyssal Curse Warlock. Like obviously they're all generally very slow, but there's one that tries to like play Altar of Fire to just destroy things in your deck. There's one that's just trying to copy as many Abyssal Curses as possible. It's very much in that relic space that you mentioned, where it's just a package that you do fun stuff with. It doesn't take up your whole deck.
Well, shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about the locations, highlight new card type, really looking forward to how these show up in future sets. But when it comes to the cooldown component, I think that was a little unintuitive when reading the cards. And I know many of us, when it was revealed, we thought 1 turn cooldown. What does that mean? Does that just mean, well, you can only use it once per turn? Oh, I see there's a gap in between. And it is a little bit better once we actually see it, and seeing it on the theory crafting, getting that door that's partway open, I think is a really nice touch. But you've talked about how playing against face up always against location, it was pretty demoralizing. And so was this cooldown element added mid development, or how did it change the way you balance the text boxes on these cards? Was it always having a turn cooldown, not having a turn cooldown? Did you ever tinker around with different length cooldowns? Just can you speak a little bit more on that for us?
Yeah, we tried a lot of different things with locations. Locations have changed a lot in development, and I want Cora to get more into that if she wants to. But I think the core thing about where we landed with locations is there is exactly like you said, like this face up effect, having to play against that like multiple turns in a row. Whether or not it actually happens, it kind of feels like it's locking you out to an extent, and I think that varies a lot with different effects. Like hypothetically, a location that just like deals AOE damage. If you're playing against a face-up effect that's active every turn, that's AOE damage, you're just like, well, I don't want to play minions, and the game boils down to I'm just not going to do this. I think the 1 turn cooldown adds honestly a lot of like health to locations where we can make a like pretty significant effects. I think of like the Vile Library, like buffing an imp with like +5/+5 or more is crazy. But because there's that one downturn, your opponent has this gap where they feel pretty safe to try to respond and get the board back. If we didn't have that, I think locations would just be, at least the designs that we ended up with, probably more snowbally. I think we'd have to design them to be a bit more tame and a bit less exciting without that 1 turn cooldown.
Yeah, it let us design locations that are reactive rather than just being proactive. Things like Biolibrary, like Great Hall. I think without the cooldown would feel a lot worse to play against. It was also just a tuning knob for us. With locations, we tried the abilities having mana costs associated with them. So originally you would play the location, and then, the ability could cost 2 mana. And if you played the 3 mana location on turn 3, you would be able to use the effect right away. And that didn't feel so good. So we were pretty sure we wanted the abilities to cost 0. And that meant that we had a hard time doing these really big effects, because you could just use them 3 turns in a row, these really big things that you didn't pay for. And it was hard to balance them. So the cooldowns gave us that interactivity between players, and it gave us that balancing knob that we just really liked, even though you're right, it's not the most intuitive thing. But when we were making locations, we were already, making so many new rules that players were going to have to learn for this new card type. We knew there was going to be a learning curve there. There was going to be some amount of explanation we were going to have to provide. So we were okay with adding a little bit more onto it, just because there was already, I guess, so much that we were asking of players there. But that was also in part why we went so simple with them right off the bat. They're not legendary. They all follow the 1 turn cooldown rule. They're all 3 mana or less, relatively straightforward, simple effects. It's not because we couldn't come up with really sick, awesome, big location effects. It's just that we wanted to start small, establish the baseline rules for locations, and then somewhere down the line, we're really excited to break those rules. But this is where we started. Although where we really started was locations originally were they took up 2 spaces on the board, and they would have a socket in the middle of them that you would be able to socket your minion into. So you would play a minion into a location, and then when the location was occupied, they would have their ability active. And then when the minion inside of the location would die, that's when the location would lose a durability. And this was all prototyped. We played with this. Clay Howell did an incredible job prototyping this for us. And it looked so cool. We were going to have these landscape images on the board. The thematics of it were going to be awesome, but the gameplay suffered, because if you had a location and you had no minion, you just couldn't use them. So the top deck effect of infused cards is already bad. The top deck effect of locations was also really awful, which is why we reluctantly had to step away from that prototype and move into just the single activatable abilities, which I think plays a lot better, though it is a little bit less flashy. But I think it was important for the overall gameplay of the set.
Could you fit a glug in a Great Hall?
So that God bless Clay Howell. There were so many problems with them. Like, how do you play the location between minions and they move around? What happens when you put a colossal minion in them? Do the Kravatoa claws go to either side?
Silas
if you have
Dark
a dormant, Silas Dark, how do you rotate? Can a minion be moved from a location out of the location, or does it die? If it gets moved out, can another minion be moved in? What happens if you evolve a minion in a location? There were so many extenuating questions, and we already at this point had Romornia that we were having to do a bunch of bug fixing with. In the beginning, when we had the resource version of Infuse, and the double wide locations was very complex. So there definitely was an effort from us to cut back a little bit, because we knew we had so many individual pieces that we wanted to do so much with.
I'm just imagining the raunchy version of Glug in a Great Hall now, and that's just the most amazing image in my head.
We gotta get him to animate that.
So was there any archetype that stood out to you as one that you really loved through development and testing, either from just really enjoyed playing it, or that there was some sort of a cool dev story that is somehow tops that? I don't know if that's possible, but somehow is tops a minion socketing into location.
I'll sing the praises of Alex Smith until the end of time. The Wild Seed package in Hunter, we were working on individual archetypes, and I had a one-on-one with him, and he was like, I'm not sure what to do in Hunter. And I was like, oh, we know we want the suspect to be Arlon. At this point, the suspect was already Arlon. We had that mapped out. And I'm like, and Arlon's backstory has a lot to do with the Wild Seed and his grove He was the guardian of a grove in Ardenweald, and he was the protector of the wild seed for Ursoc. So I'm like, and Alex has experience in World of Warcraft, so he is fantastic at taking lore and converting it into playable Hearthstone cards. And I just said, maybe we do something with wild seeds. I don't know what they look like, but maybe take that idea and run with it. And that evening, wild seeds were in the sheet, and they looked pretty much exactly like they look now. So that was like, I don't know. That was crazy. It's just very good.
I think on like same vibe but different person. Sage, actually, Cora's brother, had designed or was working on Mage and wanted to do something in the Frost space because, like Erlon, like we decided Kel'Thuzad is the suspect for Mage. And I think he just kept hitting this barrier of like an ice barrier. Kept hitting this barrier where he just couldn't find a way to do Frost in a way that was not just freezing everything over and over. And that's something that we've done before. So I don't remember the specifics of like what created this moment, but we just went to a playtest one day and he was like, all right, I got something weird for Mage. It's a bunch of skeletons. You're just summoning skeletons and they explode, and that's the deck. And then we played it and we're like, this is kind of sick. Like this isn't your average Mage deck. This is super unique. I think at the time that Kel'Thuzad, the Kel'Thuzad design of like resurrecting them all wasn't in the sheet, but all the other pieces of just like skeleton. It was new and it played super well with like infuse and board matters, all those goalposts that we had. So that deck, I love that deck.
For a long time, they just went face. We were like, what's a Frost Mage deck that just kills your opponent? We just want to get them. And the skeletons just said Death Rattle deals 2 damage to the enemy hero. And they got him. They were very good at that.
I'm sad I didn't get to play with those, but I'm glad that doesn't happen anymore.
We do some crazy things in testing. Like some of the most fun standard and battlegrounds games that I've ever played are with cards that will never ever see the light of day.
Yep. I remember Celestalon mentioning in some Twitch chat that Prize Plunderer used to go face, and yeah, I was Surprise Plunderer. So anyways, last question here before we wrap up. Really just like, are there any cool developments that happened during this? You just gave us a couple stories, but anything else that you really want to call as like, this was a cool thing that no one will ever know unless they work here and you want to share it with the world?
I can talk about the beginnings of Pure Paladin version 2. So I had worked a lot on Paladin, and I again was just like was stuck. I couldn't think of something new to do, and I had talked with like Cora and everybody in one-on-ones, and I thought maybe there's something to do with rarity that is interesting and unique. And so I made what we called Pauper Paladin, which was all about running common cards and using a lot of common cards to power up epics and the legendary. So higher rarity cards using common cards, and that kind of fit the vibe of Castle Nathria, of these like very snooty vampires, at like getting the muckborns to do all the work for them. And I think a lot of the cards that you see are pretty similar to what they were in the common version. Like Service Bell was the same card, except you would discover a common card, not a class card. And when we passed that off to final design, I think they, like, generally speaking, everybody was like, this is a neat idea, but it's how interesting is it to really run 20 common cards? Like, the higher rarity cards are higher rarity for a reason. When you open them, you're really excited to play them, and then generally speaking, they're just weirder and more unique. So like, yes, there is the benefit of common card deck, like letting you do a budget deck that has a purpose that's very explicit. But I mean, they thought we could get the same level of excitement with doing class cards, like Paladin cards. And I mean, I think where Paladin ended up is a home run in my book. I think like all of the pure stuff with Elitist Snob specifically, specific unrelated but related call out. He has multiple play lines that are all just like him like finishing a joke that isn't funny, but everyone laughs anyway.
And to your credit, all of those cards were pretty much one-to-one swaps with the pure. Elita Snob used to say he used to have the same effect, but it was for common cards in your hand. Muckborn Servant used to discover a common card. Service Bell used to draw common cards. We just changed everything cleanly over to class card or paladin card, and it plays great. It's basically just mid-range paladin, the new flavor of mid-range paladin, but the Countess is really fun. I think she's a great finisher. Nothing specific in archetype design. Obviously, locations and infuse were most of what I worried about during this process. When we finally had those like finalized for sure, things became a lot easier. But picking suspects actually was pretty hard. There were quite a few weeks in the very beginning where we were like picking suspects and locations. They changed a bunch. Shaman was originally in the Nightcloak Sanctum, and the Crixus actually was originally the Demon Hunter suspect. And then we swapped him out for Zymox, which just makes perfect sense. Also, relics were originally supposed to be for Warlock as well. We wanted to do relics in Warlock and Demon Hunter. And I just thought it would be so cool if we could do dual class relics between Warlock and Demon Hunter, but with no other dual class in the set. It didn't make a ton of sense based on the card breakdown. But I thought that would have been perfect just for the two characters. And I did see someone on Reddit say we picked Cecily as the Tiernan suspect because their name is the easiest one to say, and they are not wrong. If you go look at the names of Tiernan in World of Warcraft, they are very difficult to say.
There was one in particular that I vouched for that even if I looked at it right now, I couldn't pronounce it. I really wanted that one, but probably
so
for the
many
best.
consonants.
And
There's
they're
a
all
lot
next
going
to
on
each
there.
other.
Mm-hmm.
This is how you know that you have a former caster in charge of the set design.
No, I would completely pick the difficult name just to mess with them. I have no problem doing that. But just too long, and I don't know, wasn't gonna work out.
Cecily
Cecily's
seems
good.
nice. Yeah,
Cecily's
seems
good.
It's easy enough to remember.
Good background story, great character, easy to pronounce name. Home run.
Perfect. Well, that's all the time we have, though I will say as a closing comment, I like Erelon's hat. And
That okay, very briefly, I did see somebody wonder why Draka and Erelon are the most well dressed of any of the suspects. It's because very early on in the style guide, we like had a couple of, I think it was one artist, it might have been Raphael, did a couple of concepts of Arlon and Draka and what it would look like if they were in fancy party clothes. And we didn't end up doing them for all the other characters, but when we commissioned out those art pieces to our outsourcing artists, we gave them the style guide references and we're like, you can put them in their party clothes if you want. And they both did. So that's why they both look great. I wish we'd done it for the rest of them too. I think it would have been really fun.
yeah, I like the hat. It's a good look.
Good.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this theory crafting evening. I guess there's another session going on right now. A lot of Nathria hype today, and then we get to play with the set in a little bit. It'll be a lot of fun. So thank you so much for your time, and thanks for making Hearthstone.
Thanks for having us. We
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is not pre-recorded. We're live. You can tell from the pixels. All right. Hey, everybody. What's up? What'd you think? So, we can start recording here if
Okay.
y'all are ready. I'm glad you like it.
All right, sure.
I
am
don't have
recording.
any shoes in here, Matt.
Recording. And remember, Hat, you've got this one. So keep that
What do I
in
have?
mind.
If we mess up a lot, you need to do the editing, I think is what Edel's saying.
I know.
Because
Yeah,
Edel's otherwise occupied this weekend.
That's fine.
As am I, but what I'm doing is not nearly as cool as what Edel's doing. So oh my
They're
goodness.
asking for a hat to prove that this is not recorded.
Amazing.
That's not a ridiculous hat, that's a mad hat.
It's true. I wish I had the big one in here.
That's not the big one?
No.
Why am I surprised by this? I should not be surprised by this.
It fell off my head. Okay. We've proven enough. Oh, I'm breaking this. All right. When is the new set stream? The night the new set comes out. All right.
Oh, I was gonna do a Canva thing for that. I'll do that this weekend.
Or are you gonna put together like a flyer?
Yeah, like I did last time.
Oh, you did. That's right. We should have a
Yeah.
bake sale too.
Ooh, I like baked goods.
I'll take 2 lemon squares. All right. So, I'm recording. Are you all recording?
I am recording.
I've been recording for a little bit,
Okay.
so I could restart it.
No, it's fine. It's whatever. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Edelweiss, I'm going to tell you at the end of the show. You have to upload your audio this week. Do not forget. You haven't done it in a while. I will remind you later. Chat, remind Edelweiss at the end to upload her audio.
Oh wait, let me turn off my AC.
I thought you were just leaving it on just to troll Hat. Like this is your opportunity to get revenge.
I'm just going to
for,
run the
like,
filters
last
and
couple
publish a show. I do not care. I am not going to, like, the impulse Edelweiss has of listening to the whole thing to make sure it's perfect, that has long since left my body. All right. Intro, here we go.
Shadows hide you. I am listening. Our paths converge.
So good to see you.
Hail to you! Never lose hope.
Here for a chat.
I hear you. It has only begun. Fight on, friend!
Hello and welcome to episode 353 of Coin Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Thursday, July 21st in the evening, Theory Crafting Day. From Gadsden, New York, it's me, Ridiculous Hat. From Nomergon, Ohio, we have Edelweiss.
Hello.
From Northern Massachusetts, we have Wicked Good.
Hi.
And from where you are listeners, we have you. Thank you so much for tuning in and being here and listening and playing Hearthstone, all that stuff. Extra special thanks to our patrons and those of you that have left reviews, totally free, really helps other people find the show. Today, so I'll just start. I played 35 games of Nathria Standard Theory Crafting stream in 5.5 hours today, and my feelings are as follows. How about the rest of you?
It's harder when you're not playing it. I had a whole bunch of streams like in tiny boxes on one of my monitors because there were a couple of folks that I am a mod for that did not have any other mods that were available. So I was kind of being on watch for a lot of streams. So not a lot, like 2. But I had yours up along with Dragon Riders and Superior David's, and I was following, but it was also kind of, it's hard when it's all that tiny. I almost went out to the living room to the big television and plugged it in there to kind of see everything, but like ended up not. But I don't think I quite grasp it as well as you do. I'm still kind of I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I know some things sound busted. From some of the yelling that I heard today, not yelling on Twitter, like yelling in streams, like good yelling, not bad yelling. But I'm glad that you are coming back with that, because I'm not sure what to make of this right now, to be honest with you. But I think that the fact that you've played it and it sounds like you're having fun, that is a positive in my book.
Yep, it's To give a longer reel, I mean, we're going to talk about this set for the entire episode, which is going to be less long than the last one, because today is a 10-hour Hearthstone day for me. But suffice to say, I expected things to be pretty board heavy and like aggressive, but I'm not sure if it was going to be like really, really powerful. And on theory crafting, obviously people don't play defense, they play greedy stuff. There were a lot of powerful turns and powerful decks, and I killed a bunch of people on 5 with classes that I didn't expect to kill people on 5 with, including but not limited to Warrior, Rogue, Hunter, because Hunter is more expected. But it just, Priest, I attacked Trump on turn 6 with 2 11-11s.
Excuse me?
I attacked Trump SC, the streamer, on turn 6 with 2 11-11 humongous Razor Leaves.
Okay, that has my attention.
Because I had illuminated a Sunken Ritual. He Kurtrus to kill one of the minions. And then I went Pelagos Focused Will, and I attacked for 22. As an example of a thing that happened.
Yeah.
So, killed on 5 with a 15 attack Frothing Berserker. There was a game where I think that you two were watching where I was multitasking a work phone call and also had a double Bolner, double Snowfall Guardian situation where I killed my opponent with 2 26 attack Bolners.
Oh, was that the game against Superior David? Because I think I saw that from the other
Yes.
other side. Yeah.
I gotta go back and watch that. I'm gonna go back and see that. Sandstone Graveyard, I was apparently playing the easy version, but I got 2 5/5s with stealth out of it on turns 3 and 5. Jambre against me on turn 5 he used it to get a 14/14 stealth after he played the Scab's hero card on turn 5. Just to recap, I'm gonna go over that one again real quick. It's turn 5. Sandstone Graveyard was in play. It was a 14/14 stealth generated after playing the Scab's hero card.
How did he get a Scab's hero card on turn 5?
Shatter Shambler, Sketchy Information, Loan Shark.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, that'll do it.
It did. I don't know if it will, because I assumed that I fell through the Matrix into a new dimension where that thing is going to happen into Jambretopia. I don't know. And also, I lost to Stealer of Souls, Demon Seed, today, in a glorious clip that I will put in the show notes, where my opponent did nothing all game, then cleared all 3 phases of the quest in 1 turn, or maybe it was just 2 phases, and they cleared a lot of the quest in 1 turn, and then immediately killed me. So,
Wow.
the format is highly synergistic and powerful, and there is so much depth here, because the packages can be put in so many different decks. We talked about it in the interview about the Relic deck that I played against that Solar was playing. They had Vile Call in their deck. They played Feast of Souls. It was all token spells, just so they could only have 4 minions in their deck. And they demolished me with a huge Denathrius.
So I guess the one thing that we need to kind of center ourselves with is that this is not going to be the format, right? Because the 10 card, the decks that are there for theory crafting, the requirement is that you have, at least for the streamers, is that you have at least 10 cards from the new set in your deck, right?
Correct.
So you will not have people playing something like Big Beast Hunter with 1 new card in it, right? Or somebody who wants to just play Quest Priest with like 2 new cards in it or whatever. Like, there are things that you're not going to see, and you're also not going to have people trying to counter anything because it's theory crafting, right? Like, one of the things that I saw from the imp deck is that as soon as spammy Arcanist starts getting tacked into decks, that's going to get a little bit more precarious, because Imp Gang Boss, if you get one health minion on the board, that's a full clear every single time, right? So,
and there was one card that was widely played that I think I would say is powerful and wasn't really a counter card, but is an older card that was very powerful against all the things I saw today. Snowfall Guardian.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Which is going to come up multiple times this episode. No, Glug. It's every time I played Glug, I won that game. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So I think it's good to kind of see, this is the theater of the possible right now with the theory crafting, but this is not necessarily going to be the format that we're going to have in like 2 weeks.
The important takeaway that I really want to plant here is, if you were concerned about this set being low power and not interesting to explore, I can tell you right now, you don't got to worry about a thing. It felt closer to a Saviors or a Skolo than a Stormwind. There was not a lot of from-hand lethality. There was power, but not lethality. And every game I played with Relic DH, I didn't have great lists, but every single game I ran out of cards and couldn't kill my opponent. I drew a lot. I cheated a ton of mana, but there was no lethality. I couldn't kill him. So, like, I was playing a Quest Demon Hunter list, and the suggestion, which I think is correct in chat, was you need to play Renathal Quest DH because you draw too quickly and you need more cards in the deck. So, I don't know. There's power and synergy and combo possibilities and a lot of good aggressive stuff. I do think there's a lot of interesting things to explore. So if you were worried about the set being uninteresting or low power, you don't have to worry about that. We haven't seen what the meta is like at all. We really haven't. We've seen some cards that work well together from deck recipes or that are decks that are easy to build. But yeah, I had a really good time today and it did not feel the way I expected it to. And there's a question in chat. Can we play a real aggro deck? 1,000% yes. 100,000% yes. If you were looking at Imp Warlock from this set, and you were comparing it to Murloc Warlock from last set, stop that right now. This is a real deck that draws 6 cards for 2 mana routinely, regularly. I never saw an Impending Disaster that was less than 4 from this deck. And Vile Library is just enormous. It's real aggro was super duper here. Super duper here. And Demon Hunter got Soulfire. He just gave it, pre-nerf Soulfire, they just gave it to Demon Hunter.
Impending Catastrophe. I think you said Impending Disaster again.
The 2 mana draw a million card. That one.
Yeah, that card and that sounds like it's probably the most appropriately named card in the set because it's every time that gets played, it is that for the opponent, is what it feels like.
I'm not sure it needs to draw a card without imps in play. I mean, not that you ever do that, but I don't think it needs that +1.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not ready to call for nerfs, but if that card ended up costing more mana in the future, I wouldn't be the most surprised person. I'd probably be like, I get it. I envision
Given
that
one of
response.
the prime activators is Wicked Shipment, which costs 1 mana, and if you've traded it, gives you 4 imps.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there are a lot of prime activators. That deck does not run out of stuff to do. So, Edel, before we go any further, Life and Ladder. No. Life and Conquest. Ready for tomorrow?
Yeah. I had a great chat with TJ during my rehearsal this morning. I'm sure I'll have a bit of jitters tonight and tomorrow morning, but I'm excited for this sweet opportunity, which I guess we haven't really announced on the show yet. But I'm going to be casting this first week of Last Call for Grandmasters. So, very, very amazing
that's
opportunity.
The wrong button. Keep going. I pressed the wrong button. I went here. There we go. That one.
We're not here. I'm not hearing
I can't
it,
hear
so.
it.
You can't hear it? Oh,
No, we didn't hear the intro either.
Yeah.
I know what I did. Here you go.
There we go.
Joss made me turn it off.
And you listened?
I do what Joss tells me.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, it should be a really great time. And like I mentioned last episode, end of an era. So cool to be a part of that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna kill it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, I am not worried about you being awesome tomorrow. Like, absolutely not at all. So
I'm worried about you being like too awesome. Because then
that I'm worried about. Yeah.
They have to go back to not having, unless they keep you on. Well, I guess they're ending GM, so they don't have to do that. So
Well, they have Masters Tours.
it's true.
Who knows? Because there's nothing like there's one more Masters Tour this year, and then we have no idea what the system is next year. Given that they're ending this current system, I imagine there's going to be a pretty complete overhaul. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Super
they'll have presumably they will have some broadcasted competitive Hearthstone
Yes.
in
presumably.
2023.
And
presumably.
I have some players that like whether or not they're going to keep being competitive will depend on how nice that circuit looks. So
We shall see. Well, also you beat Dark Souls.
I did beat Dark Souls. I would like to say that yes, Bed of Chaos is BS. That boss is awful.
It's not
And
difficult. It's stupid. It's very different.
yes, exactly. That was what was frustrating because it
Miyazaki wants
was
to
a
make
bad
Super Mario
puzzle.
so bad.
It was a bad puzzle. And puzzles, I think, can be really hit or miss when it comes to a boss fight because either they're really sweet and you feel amazing when you figure it out, or they're just nonsense and you finish it and you're like, wow, I should have looked up for the cheese for that because that was just a miserable experience. But apart from that, had a great time. Anor Londo went dark. I didn't light the flame. We we just kept the power for ourselves because the giants are awful and humans are the future. So yeah, that was my Dark Souls experience.
What did you think of the music during the final fight?
It was pretty great. Although I honestly don't remember much. I called Solaire and we just crushed him. First try.
Good for you. Congrats. A lot of winning. There's commentary in the chat. The game Stray came out recently, where you play as a cat.
I have to do that and see how Weiss reacts.
That's what I've been doing this week.
My
I
wife
started.
has been
I haven't
playing
gotten
it.
very far. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been watching it. My wife has been playing it. My favorite part about the game is that you are a cat, and everything else is good. But the main part is that you play a cat, and you do very catly things.
But the mechanics are like doing cat things, and like it actually like does things in the world. Like you swat at the robot to wake it up, and you end up scratching on the door to get people to let you in and stuff like that. And you curl up in a little ball on a bed and you take a cat nap, and it's delightful.
Yeah, like I said.
And you ride around in buckets, as cats do. I don't know if cats actually do that, but this one does.
My favorite part is that you're a cat.
Yeah. I played it with my 15-year-old, and I'm used to squealing at this point, being the father of 3 teenagers. I have not that took squealing to another level. Like there was like an abundance of squealing throughout like that. We only played it for like an hour and a half, but like there was quite a bit of squealing, and I took several screenshots, which I normally don't do on my PS5.
There's also a great Polygon video or article with videos of people's cats watching Stray.
Yeah.
And it's adorable.
That sounds great. I feel like there's probably a lot of TikTok content there.
Oh yeah.
Probably. Do we have news other than like set?
Not really. We made the news. We're going to make the news, I guess, if you're listening to the podcast version, but we don't have any. I mean, the news is that the set's coming out. That's basically the news.
Okay. Are we doing this tournament section, or are we just going to go talk about new cards?
Yeah, up to you. We can. There were qualifiers. There aren't any more qualifiers. So
let's talk about the qualifiers then. Let's do it real quick. Here we go.
Okay.
It's the grand tournament.
So we had the last week of Masters Tour qualifiers for Masters Tour 6 this past weekend. Most of the winning lineups, as one would expect, were Druid, Rogue, and something. Which Druid and which Rogue didn't super matter. Prestor and Alignment Druid were both good. Thief Rogue and Boat Rogue were both good. You can play Renathal, you can not play Renathal, doesn't matter. As long as Rogue and Druid were in your lineup, you were pretty much good. And then it was basically just a matter of what you wanted your third deck to be. Big Spell Mage, Control Shaman were both popular. Those were in a lot of winning lineups. Quest Hunter, Big Beast Hunter, Board Priest, Control Paladin, Curse Warlock, all were in winning lineups as well. The Boat Rogue and Thief Rogue were both in the top 5 decks by win rate. It was Control Shaman was actually the most banned and the highest win rate deck. Not by a lot. It's like maybe a few percentage points or a few points of a percentage point over Boat Rogue, but still enough. But Control Shaman and Anaconda Druid were the most banned. And then you had Quest Hunter did very well as well, and Big Spell Mage also did well. So that's kind of a preview for what we're likely to see in GM starting this week. So GM is, as we said, starting this week. You should make sure to tune in so that you get to see Edelweiss casting. It's there are a little bit of odd hours, but you check it out in your local time. I'm sure there will be a link in the show notes to the guide to find out when it's going to be on. I'll probably be listening to it while I'm driving this weekend. But so we're going to have Conquest this week, and then Trio returns next week. So that's only going to be the second time that we've had Trio. So that'll be interesting to see how they decide to make the buckets, because the last time that we had Trio, 4 of the 5 buckets had Warrior, and it was just a bunch of Pirate Warrior mirrors. So it'll be interesting to see how they tweak the buckets, but I'm sure there's going to be less Rogue and Druid in those buckets based on what we're seeing now. Then we have 2 weeks off for GM because the following week is the week of the launch. There's no competitive activity the weekend of the launch. The following week is Masters Tour 5. And then we return with Last Hero Standing for week 3, followed by playoffs, which will be best of 7 Conquest, which I can't remember the last time that they've done that. It's been a while. I think there was
7?
best of 7. Yeah.
Ugh.
So those are going to be some long matches.
That's bring 5, ban 1? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to watch. I think I remember like we had best of 7 in like the finals of like playoffs or something, like before GM once or twice. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes back.
It's so funny to see that when, like, we have previously had a global finals where there were best of 3 matches before, like, the top 4 or whatever. And it was, so I think that was one of the ones at BlizzCon or something. And it was just sort of like, what, best of 3 in the global finals? What's happening? So to see now in just, like, the last call, right? Not even global finals, best of 7. That's intense.
Yeah, they're like really leading into like making this like the American Ninja Warrior of Hearthstone competition.
So Pavel's Worlds was bring 5, ban 1. It was a best of 7.
Yeah. And I think they had like an extra deck that they could slot in if they got to like the top 8 or something. It was weird.
I think it was BO5
ago.
and Swiss. You submitted a BO7 lineup for the top 8, but it was BO5 and Swiss, something like that. This is going to be a lot of games. I mean, I guess they nerf Control Warrior or whatever, but
I guess we'll see how much faster this meta is. Because if it meta's like it is now, those matches could take a minute. So, yeah.
Gross.
I would say I'd rather it be best of 7 than to do a thing where it's like multiple best of 5s. I have on one occasion been in a situation where it was like double elim, and they did the thing where if you came up through the losers bracket, you had to win twice. If I hadn't gotten 2 series in a row, we would have done like another. It's best of 7 sounds preferable to that.
Yeah, I mean, after best of 7, I mean, you're basically into like WSOE, like pick ban format after that. So,
which is the best format, hands down. It's just a lot of work for the admins.
Yeah,
a lot of work for everybody.
Well, yeah.
But that's tournaments. So that's what we're. But make sure to tune in this weekend and watch Edel, and then tweet at Abar and tell them how wonderful she did.
I will be generally the last matchups of the day. So I think it's supposed to be the last like few on each day, 3 or 4.
Because they have like the APAC casters, then the EU casters, and the Americas casters.
Yeah, which is not like super relevant. It's not region divided. All the players are mixed up. But in terms of, I guess,
just shifts,
friendliness,
All right. Well, that's tournaments. It's time. New card clock. Let's go.
So, as per tradition, we are doing our 5 different card predictions kind of thing. Hat has a little bit different context having played with the cards already, but for those who may not have listened before or don't recall, we go card you can't wait to play with, card you're scared of, card you want to be good but isn't, card you think is over or underrated, and card you don't understand. And we generally do this because if we were to go through all 50 plus or whatever cards were revealed in the last week or so, we would die. It would just be the off curve stuff. Steve, I don't know how you did that before, where you
I
just went
don't
through.
either. I
Those were
really
what,
don't
3-hour
either.
shows?
It
3-hour
was very
segments.
long. Yeah,
Ah.
it was 2 3-hour episodes recorded on subsequent days, and I still don't know how I survived that. And people ask me, "Are you going to bring it back?" And now that I've done this way, no, I'm not bringing that back. I'm sorry. It's so much work and it's so much talking.
Yeah.
And like
It's
people do that content. It's out there.
Yeah.
I think what Zottle did one with a group of people earlier. They're
that's
I
the
know
Pheno
Amberfly-
the
don't-
Pheno
yeah,
stream is the go-to.
that's
Like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pheno,
I mean,
Hunter
and-
Race, and usually
yeah.
John Bray, and then someone else.
And Dragon Rider does one for Amberflight Gaming where she gets her team together and does that too. You could go watch that if you want to see a blow by blow, card by card analysis. I've done that. I know how much work it is. This is better just to give you some highlights and give you some things to think about, I think.
Yep.
And we'll probably end up talking about a lot of the other cards in the context of the ones that we're going to talk about, given the packages.
Inevitably. Since this is such a synergistic set, I think in some respects we could very easily just talk about certain packages rather than singular cards because they just sort of go together. But Pat, I think you should kick us off in terms of just cards you can't wait to play with. What are you looking at? And I am not surprised by the class here.
Hold on. I want you to go first. Because your answer was my answer until I said you can have this if you want because I got a backup. The favorite, I think this is my favorite deck I played so far today, was one you made for me. We called it 2014 Warrior. Because you said, I want to make Cruel Taskmaster, Acolyte of Pain, and Frothing Berserker good again.
Yep.
Talk to us.
So this deck, the only card that costs more than 3 is Olgra. And I'm not even sure if she should be in there, but, she could be a good finisher. There's certain boards where she'll be incredible. And there's maybe a few things that might be on the questionable side. I mentioned and had stream earlier that I feel like the deck was very much, I built it in terms of like hearts. You shoot for the moon, and if you nail it, it's going to be nuts. So I have cards in here like there's the 1-mana 1/2 Battle Cry, buff all the cards in your hand by +1 health. It's of course
Card was good, by the way. I played that. Dredger Staff. Played Dredger Staff. Turn 1, I played that, coin Trog into a Sinstone Graveyard Secret Rogue. Who, their answer to it was, screw it, you can fill your board with Trogs. And I had Little Rokara in my hand.
Oh.
They died.
It was the wrong answer. Yeah. So Little Rokara, this deck very much is prepared to take advantage of. I know a lot of people were looking at more of a conditioning style in Rage Warrior, and I built that first, and I'm like, this is sweet. It's got a lot of legendaries. It's super mid-range. What happens when we cut all that crap and just go low to the ground, top out at like 3s, Septolgra, and I sent that one to Hat because I knew he would like it way better. We got Sinstone Totem in there because it just gains a health every turn, and you give it the attack anyway from your axe, etc.
It was great, by the way. It never died.
Deck.
It never died. I just buffed it. I damaged it with the location once, and then I swung with Imbued Axe, and it was like it was a 3/6 on turn 3. What did they do? It's huge.
Sinstone Totem's art kind of looks like how I envision you playing that deck. Just like that expression.
It's pretty close.
Yeah. Well, and it embodies what you're doing. You're snowballing. And so Imbued Axe, if we're trying to say in a single card, what's insane? 3 mana, 2/3. I had some reservations because it was only to attack. The 3 durability is what matters there, because just even uninfused, giving your damage minions +1/+1 is just such a powerful effect. You can sometimes just coin it out and you don't get a ton of value on that first swing, but then you play 2 things, maybe you've got a location already down, etc. And it just really, really snowballs boards very effectively. So it's an all-in deck, but I think when you've got things like the staff dredger and other stuff to just buff the health on minions that otherwise we'd be more worried about, like Warsong Envoy, like the Berserker, Frothing Berserker. Yeah, a lot of these cards that before didn't have the health to sort of stay living are much scarier. And the 2-drop is insane as well. The Armor Smith for hand buffs.
The Anima Devourer or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
That's a whenever, not an after. So even if it dies, it does the thing, just like Armorsmith does.
Yep.
You
Anima
just end up
Extractor
with,
is the name of the card.
yeah, there we go. And also just playing it with Crazed Wretch, which, has charge. You just make it big and then it has charge and then you kill them.
And we don't play Riot in this deck, right? Like Riot's the control card. That's not the
No,
card.
I have the Man the Cannons, and even that I'm sort of like on the fence. It's good if there's going to be other minion decks, or decks that at least summon some minions, because it's like you pay 1 more for something that's a bit better than a Whirlwind, because you can kill a thing while Whirlwinding your board. But I determined that I didn't want to play both Riot and Man the Cannons, and Man the Cannons, at least worst case scenario, you can like hit something you don't care about and Whirlwind the rest of your board, whereas Riot is just completely dead if the opponent doesn't have minions.
Yeah, Riot definitely strikes me as more of like a control card, like not really something like this.
Mid-rangey,
Yeah,
right?
mid-range to control deck. Yeah, where you're playing a bunch of butts and you just want to be able to like clear a bunch of things after playing, like kind of like a mass provoke type of thing.
Yeah. I played against a few other warriors that were a little bit higher curve. Seemed okay. Like the aggressive snowbally start along with Rokara was what felt broken. And the mid-range, like the mid-game versions, especially with Remornia, just felt kind of awkward. Remornia doesn't work well with the Rokara hero, and you really want to play Rokara hero. So I wouldn't be surprised. Like, Remornia has some cute things. It's basically, you can have a guaranteed damage minion on your turn if you want, because you hide it in your weapon slot. There's some value there, but it's really just awkward to use. It's a cool card, but it never felt all that great to me.
Yeah, that feels more for like a slower warrior that's going to be running brawls and shield slams and stuff like that.
Yeah, but
it's more of like a control tool.
I don't even know if it's great there, though.
It may not be, but that feels like more like where it's going to fit.
Yeah. If it does, anywhere. I don't know if it will. Like, I'm not convinced in Remornia at all, just because every single time I saw it, it was with Rokara Hero, and it was incredibly awkward every time. It wasn't awkward every time? Serrated Bone Spike. Yeah!
Oof,
hey!
that card.
A 0-mana rogue card. Okay? Take it. It activates combo and it doesn't cost anything if you kill something, and there's going to be things to kill. So, every time I played this card, it was awesome. Great for activating Private Eye and Curve. Great with Sinstone Graveyard, which is a hell of a card. Edelweiss will talk more about that in the cards we're scared of section, and she should be.
Yep.
It's just everything that I wanted Rogue support to be. I talked about it when it was revealed. I was excited then, for the same reasons I'm excited now. Having played with the card, my excitement was justified. There is another 2-mana deal 3 in this set, Frozen Touch. The mage one where it deals 3, and if you have infused 3, then it goes back to your hand. This card was 9 to 12 damage in most games I played. I didn't end up playing Mech Mage today, because it's not enough new cards. This card makes Mech Mage better. It is so easy to infuse. It's so much damage when you do. It's just a lot, and it's the value, and the value also means you're filling your turns with more mana that you're spending, so your turns feel more efficient. You just throw it out there when it's yellow, and you just play on curve, and then it ends up dealing somewhere between 9 and 12 damage. Usually the way that games would end with it is that I would play the third infused copy and the fourth uninfused copy on the same turn.
Well, like Serpent Wing, basically.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah. Yeah, like what you play the green one when it's lethal. Otherwise, you play the yellow one.
Yeah. Infuse through was not hard to do, even in the slower decks. And the volatile skeletons are solid. Like, the locations are good enough. You're gonna infuse. So it's a really good card. By the way, cards. I would say that most of our voyage suggestions, I think, were pretty on point for card from the previous expansion.
Steve has to go.
Yeah, I just wanted to look at our cards from last expansion.
Okay. All right.
I thought you would mention it when you said something. Oh, we'll do that again. That's fine. All right. And Steve, what is a card that you can't wait to play with?
So people say that I don't like to go face, and it's not true. I just like to go face all at once. So I'm looking forward to David S. Pumpkins Mage, and I'm just gonna keep calling it that until it catches on. But I want to play Kel'Thuzad the Inevitable. It seemed like skeletons, from what I saw, it seemed like they were doing what they were supposed to be doing, and I like the idea of trading where it also lets you go face, so it kind of plays into what I like to do. And like the whole package with all of those cards plus solid alibi, being able to buy you some time, it sounds like it's up my alley. So it seems like that was doing well enough to be viable once we get the full set, or once we get the actual meta in a week.
2 weeks.
2 week. Well, week and a half, yeah.
Oh, so
It's
long.
so long, yeah.
We should take a moment to mention the 12-day waiting period is atypical and torturous. I don't know what we're gonna. Well, I know what we're gonna do next week for the show, but I don't know what we're gonna do next week as humans. Because
we're just gonna, sing that song from Into the Woods, right? Agony.
We're gonna play the cat game. That's what we're gonna do.
I don't know
We'll
that
just play
song.
the cat game.
Yeah.
The cat. We could play the cat game.
Yeah.
So, from Voyage, I think we did pretty well. Steve, your pick that you can't wait to play with from last set was Illuminate. Good card.
Yeah.
It was pretty important in Boar Priest. It's not in Quest Priest, right?
No. Sometime I think some versions have it. You discover it enough, and it's okay. You don't generally want to discount the spells in Quest Priest.
Okay.
But you pick it, and it's good enough.
Yeah. Edelweiss, you picked Radar Detector.
Yep. Had its ups and downs. Still a solid card.
Yeah, it was good, but we thought it was going to be really crazy the way Mech Paladin worked, and it turns out your hands fall a lot anyways, and also sometimes you just whiff with the cards.
Yeah,
that you
well,
end up
and the hand buff deck is very much mid-range, and sometimes just you lose board the early turns and you can't get it back.
Yeah. Or you just take it out because you're running more Divine Shield stuff that aren't mechs, and just running more of like the hand buff stuff.
And then I picked Spitelash Siren. Too soon. Too soon.
I played against a Naga Mage this morning, and it beat me up.
There was that list I was talking about, the Renathal Naga Mage list on HSR.
Wildfire. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say it's good, but I'm gonna say that you can get there.
I mean, it got there mostly through confusion, but it got there.
Sounds about right. All right, cards we're scared of. We've got a few. Steve, you go first.
Well, so I'm naturally afraid of whenever Druid gets any cards, period. So Widow Blue Seedsman, which is a 4-mana 3/2 with a battle cry, draw a nature spell, gain an empty mana crystal. I mean, Druid has plenty of ramp, but this is good enough. And this gets you more ramp, or it gets you more draw, which is generally what you're running. The nature spells are the ramp and the draw cards. So it's getting you more ramp and more draw, and it's a body, and it's more ramp for those decks. So I'm a little bit nervous. I mean, this looks like when I read Guff for the first time, and it sounds a lot like the text that's on Guff that's not set your maximum mana to 20. So I'm a little bit I don't think I didn't see a lot of Druid. I don't know, you did, Hat. Maybe Death Rattle Druid occasionally, but just because this doesn't seem like a deck, like a card that's going to go into like a whole new deck. It seems like it's going to be a refinement of the Druid decks that we already have. So we may see that a lot more on day one.
Yep. I played a game with I tried a Renathal full combo Denathrius thing, and it didn't end up being reliable enough. But I also tried 30 card, where I just took current Ramp Druid, and I added in 2 Convoke, 2 Seedsman, Denathrius, Kael'thas, and then I think Planted Evidence and Natural Causes to specifically hit the limit. I didn't want to play them. Oh, I played Topior too. I had to cut like good cards. I had to cut Moonlit Guidance. I think I cut Vate, but I kept Aquatic Form. And I added in Green Thumb Gardeners because I felt like it. Because I wanted to do Kael'thas Brand Green Thumb, which I did, and it was very powerful. I also played Convoke the Spirits. People are gonna feel feelings about that card, and I think they're justified in doing that. That's the Yogg box for those of you that don't remember, that casts 8 Druid spells. It's good. It's a good card.
I mean, it just builds you a board and draws you cards, and draws you cards and maybe ramps you, right?
It's a little funky, but like I felt like I had whiffed on it for most of it, and then the last card was Miracle Growth, and I'm like, oh, okay. And it was fine.
How many times did you Celestial Alignment yourself?
I only played it once, and I won the game the turn after by going Kael'thas, Brand, Gardener, and then Denathrius for 16. So
did we talk about this one on the show before or no?
Which Seedsman?
No, Convoke.
I don't know, but it's Ultimate Infestation.
Yeah, I mean, I did just because I did the math on it, and you're about 20% to Celestial yourself.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's just kind of the risk of, that's the risk out of the reward, right? I mean, that's just going to happen sometimes, but.
Is it a risk? I think
it didn't feel high risk.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not the worst thing in the world if you're doing that and you kind of know what you're getting yourself into when you're playing a card like that.
And it's still probably better for you than them if you have another Convoke the Spirits. Like,
I was playing Naga Giants. It was fine. It would have been fine. Like, I would have just had 0 mana 8/8s, but instead I just drained 14 life and filled my board.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on if you're planning on doing 20 mana worth of things or not in that game, right? Because, like, if your game plan is doing 20 mana worth of things a turn, and then all of a sudden you're also letting your opponent do 20 mana worth of things a turn, that can sometimes backfire on you.
Oh, yeah, but they don't, though.
I would envision the Druid getting the better end of that deal, because they can just play the second Convoke. And then you're getting a lot more than 20 mana again. And I think Convoke is a pretty good example of why Rune of the Archmage is a worse card than Puzzle Box, because Convoke is way more than 20. Way more than 20. And Nightshade Bud being in the pool is not bad either, for what it's worth. It's pretty okay. I think a reason, like, this is just a really, really good, Widowbloom Seedsman, just a really good engine card. It makes the deck better. It gets played. It's strong. It will trade with one thing. If you're against Imp Warlock, the body does not matter. The body matters if you're against a deck that's like playing Volatile Skeleton, sure. If you were against Imp Warlock, do not make the argument that this is better against minion decks. Not that one. Not any minion deck that knows what it's doing and is trying to do it. Because you're still taking a turn off here, but it's another ramp card and it's card draw. Like, it's fine. It's Mire Keeper with upside.
I think one of the best things for this card is that it makes the coins and innervates better. So when you do something like coin or innervate Wild Growth, now you actually have a real thing to do on 4, which is to play this. If you play this on 4 and then you're going into Guff, you get to Guff and Hero Power on the same turn, which is crazy good. It also means maybe you don't care as much about Jerry Rig only hitting Nourish, which means if you're going to do a Torpor deck where you play Cold Tooth Mine and Torpor is just the highest cost card in your deck, you can get away with doing Jerry Rig to draw either Nourish or the Otter card. And that's okay because you now run 6 ramp cards instead of just Wild Growth and the Nourish. So yeah, this really, I guess 7 because Guff, but yeah, this really kind of spooks me in terms of Druid just being even more consistent with all their ramp and everything.
Druid's gonna be a thing. Now, Ramp Druid right now is okay. Celestial is pretty good in a greedy metagame. The meta is definitely gonna shift, but I'm a little worried. It's reasonable to say I'm a little worried. I think it's reasonable.
But I mean,
to
also if it can get Celestial on time more and get the ramp to get Celestial more consistently, then maybe there's something there, right?
Yep. But Druid does lose to Impending Catastrophe, which is the card that I'm scared of. Because every single time I saw this card today, it was unbelievable. Typically 2 mana draw 4 to draw 6. Somewhere in that range. Saw it in regular old Imp Warlock. There was a list of that I ran into of Stealer of Souls, Warlock. The Demon Seed. Killed me from hand. Really, really powerful. That just added in Fiendish Circle and Wicked Shipment to play this card. To draw a bunch with Stealer all at once, or to kill you at the end of the game because fatigue. Because the issue was not having enough draw to self-fatigue, and we figured that out really, really quick. Also, there was a Phylactery Zoo going around because you just draw all the combo pieces. You can activate Rod in 1 turn with this very easily.
I just ate Hat. Can you not do that? Like...
This costs 2 mana.
It's a lot. I mean, Backfire, Warlock losing Backfire was the thing that hurt Warlock the most, right? And this is Backfire, but apparently way better. The only downside of it, instead of you taking damage, is you need to run another card to enable it, which does not seem to be a problem.
It's also Shadow.
Yep.
Which is relevant for 10. And yeah.
So I lost because the Demon Seed deck, they Tamsin Catastrophe and held the 0 mana one. So the turn they played Stealer, they just boop, and they just drew a bunch. Yeah. Really, really powerful. So, like, Backfire was globally useful. Important damage increment. Worked well with Raise Dead, whatever. And Handlock had a lot of really powerful cards that it lost. But we're not talking about Handlock here. This is both an aggro enabler and a combo enabler in that you can just... There was a Magic deck a long, long time ago called Elfin Nail. Because there was a card called Skull Clamp that was completely broken. And what it did, it was a 1-mana equipment that it gave a minion +1/-1, and when it died, you drew 2 cards. It was crazy. So what you did in the equivalent of Ramp Druid at the time is you added in 16 1-health minions to draw more cards. That is roughly what we're doing here. We are taking a full-on combo deck that has no interest in committing to the board, and we are adding in Fiendish Circle and Wicked Shipment just to enable the broken draw. So, it's a lot. It is too early to talk nerf talk unless we're talking about Snowfall Guardian, in which case I got all day. Don't care how long we're here, I got all day. But this card is the closest thing I saw to what seems like a straight-up costing error. It was used for, like, turn 5. Imp Swarm, there was 2 more imps to play, this for 5 cards, play a 1-drop. If you're making Imp Swarm look broken, something's going on here. And I don't know what it is, but I'm not sure I like it.
I mean...
So, yeah.
Divine Favor costed 3, right?
It did.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. This card spooks me a bit. And then, Edelweiss, you have a card that also I think is pretty reasonable to be spooked by.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Impending Catastrophe was going to be my pick, and then I saw you had it, and I was like, yep, we're on the same page here. But I had to put Sinstone Graveyard, because of course you wouldn't. You're excited to play with this one. Sinstone Graveyard, we talked about it a little bit earlier with John Bray and his Loan Shark coin shenanigans, this can make some pretty chunky minions. And I believe it was turn 5, you said, that John Bray made a 14/14? So
Yes.
probably
And
an outlier.
Scab's Hero. I was talking to Deck Tech, and apparently I got the low roll draw. Because Deck Tech sent me a
okay.
picture of on turn 5, it was a 1919. There was also an 18-2 weapon equipped from Draka.
Mm.
There was no Scab's
Yeah.
Hero, but the screenshot appears to show a Kael'thas and a Malygos.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I mean, it is a Jombre
Okay.
deck, right?
It is a
Okay.
genre deck, and you know they say if you just keep setting up 2-turn lethals, eventually you'll kill your opponent. Well,
Who says that?
that's a 2-turn.
Who says that?
lethal
I
if
want to
ever-
talk to him.
Probably John Bray.
Probably. Anyways,
I mean,
I don't know if
the
it's
Draka
reliable.
alone is a 2-turn lethal right there.
It's yes, 2-turn lethal. It doesn't quite 2-turn Renathal decks by itself. You need to fill in 4 damage somewhere, but you're close.
And now we know why they printed the Light It Burns. Which,
Well, Light
Yeah.
It Burns targets a minion. The minion was stealthed.
well, I mean, it gets to hit you
Still.
once, but then you kill it and then you heal, as long as it doesn't kill
I
you
don't
immediately.
know. If you get hit for
That's-
18, I don't think you're gonna make it.
Yeah, that's a pretty big caveat, Steve. If you're not dead, then you can deal with the 18-18.
Listen, hope springs eternal, okay?
Just play Shard.
I can't. They can
Oh, wait.
steam cleaner it now.
And also, no, I
We're
meant...
just- Take it.
Shard of the Naru. It does. Those are definitional stats.
Well,
It's
so,
just
but then you can
Theaton.
silence it, so then you can Light Will Burn you.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
a 2-card.
That's 2 cards to deal with a ginormous thing.
Yeah.
Oof.
Anyways, reasonable fear. I don't think that Jombre shenanigans will happen on ladder very much, but reasonable fear.
I mean, you know, again, this meta is going to be a little bit lower powered than the one we'll have at launch. If that gets popular, people will figure out a way to target it. Maybe not on day 1, but you know, if it's targetable, which I would imagine something like that would be. So,
I mean, even the not as ridiculous scenarios where you're making, 6/6s or 8/8s or whatever with the graveyard are pretty spooky to me.
Yeah, I mean, I just had a couple 5/5s on turn 3 and turn 5, and they were, a couple 5/5s on turn 3 and turn 5. So, seemed good. Yeah. All right, but cards we want to be good, but aren't. Wait, hold on. Oh, no. Cards we were scared of. Cards we were scared of in the last expansion. Edelweiss, what were you scared of?
Switcheroo.
Nerfed.
Still
Well-
scary.
Not
I-
as it's
I-
no longer 2 12/12s on 3, but it is still
True.
scary. But it is worse.
It's still extremely powerful and part of the reason that Boar Priest functions.
Yes. Steve, card you were scared of last expansion.
Forged in Flame, which
Deck deleted.
yeah, well, it's not there anymore because the actual card to be scared of was From the Depths, but
We'll
Yeah.
get to that later.
Yeah.
We will. Hey me, cards you were scared of. Spitelash Siren and Swift Scale Trickster. One in the past, one hopefully in the near future.
I mean, Trickster's good now. I mean, it's
That's
caused me to roll my eyes all the way back in my head a lot.
we're in the cards
so-
you're scared of category. I am alluding to the fact that I don't think that 4-mana unconditional Rogue Dragoncaster is going to stick around forever.
Yeah.
I think it's a spooky card. And Spitelash Siren, they
We hardly knew you.
nerfed it. I don't know.
I don't think anyone messed around with a Trickster Smokescreen Death Rattle Rogue in Theory Crafting today, and I feel like there might be something there now.
Well, that's just Mine Rogue on ladder, right? Like we saw that deck be good in tournaments and on ladder with Mine
Well, and
Rogue.
I think some people brought it to Last Call, so
It did well. Yeah.
yeah.
It did well at the last master. Yeah. So reasonable cards to be scared of. Good job, us. Cards we want to be good that aren't. What you got, Edel?
The Countess, which maybe I'll be wrong. Also, anytime I say the Countess, I immediately want to launch into the Diablo 2 dialogue for the Forgotten Tome from Act 1 of that game. But that is not safe for this podcast in terms of the wording of yeah. But it just strikes me as like a little bit too slow. You have to be totally pure pally with not a not really other cards that want you to be totally pure pally. Like Snob is good, but you don't need to be completely pure. Countess, you have to be completely pure or be able to reliably draw your neutral cards, and that seems like a big ask. Maybe not. Maybe we have enough Paladin cards that it's not a super big ask, but I feel like something slower. I'm still going to be wanting to put Holy Smite and Carriel Hero in the deck to make that kind of stuff happen. We'll see. Definitely powerful 3 mana for a 0 mana legendary discovered from another class. Like, it's a strong effect. It's just 7 mana for just a big minion that has no keywords the turn you play it. And if we are going to have some faster decks, I don't know if like this is it. In my mind, it's not exactly a finisher. It's a very heavy value card, and I don't know if that's going to be good enough anymore.
This is Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, isn't it?
No.
Why is it not?
You have to pay 3.
Oh, you have to pay
for the
3 mana
invitation.
for the. So you have to pay 3. So it's like old, like
Post
so you
nerf
get
Dragon Queen
1 right
Alexstrasza.
away if it's on 10 mana. If it's 10 mana, okay, yeah.
I mean, I played it in one game in Theory Crafting today, and it was solid. I got Murozond, and then I played Glug.
Well, I mean would it have been as good if you didn't get Glug though? I mean, because Glug makes everything better.
That's Steve. When you're right, you're right. What can I say?
I mean, Holy Paladin, Wild Pyromancer aside, right? Like, other than that, like Holy Paladin's pretty close
Smite.
to all class cards now, right?
Yeah, and
Smite.
if you can put
It's
this in
Smite,
your
yeah.
deck and
Samuro.
just say, well, we get the neutral cards eventually, and then this is on. Maybe that's ends up. But I just, I don't know. I think we've got more proactive cards than this.
Yeah. I mean, the class legendaries are generally better than the neutrals. I mean, they are also more synergistic typically. So it could kind of go either way depending on, like, I want to make a legendary minions are always good joke, but I don't think I'm going to here just because, like, the class legendaries are generally where the power is.
And
Like,
it's
the
Discover,
neutrals are the ones that,
right? Like,
that
it's
tend,
not
and
random.
it's Discover. Yeah.
It's Discover.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it was random, it would be really bad.
Oh, yeah, it would be terrible.
There's definitely power here in that it is Discover, and they're just class legendaries. So you can do some pretty crazy things. The turn you play it, it's 7 mana, 7/7, and I don't know how often you're going to have breathing room for that. And when you do, is it going to be powerful enough to win you the game? I don't know.
Can you discover colossals from these? I know colossals are
Yes.
excluded from some pools.
I just told you about McLug.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Sorry. How could I forget Glug?
How could you? How could you?
Sorry. I'm sorry, Glug. I
Yeah.
apologize profusely.
The colossal rule is it can't be dropped into play through either a transform or random,
Or
like summon. Transform or summon.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
you can
okay.
discover it. Yep.
Okay.
It can be dropped into. You can find them in hand. You just can't drop them in play.
Okay.
The only neutrals in Holy Paladin are Wild Pyro, Samuro, and Smite. But playing that deck without those 4 cards,
Yeah,
is not
that's
a
icy.
good idea. So, it would be much later. Okay. Card that I want to be good that isn't Collateral Damage. 8 mana, spell, piercing shot, 3 minions. Right? You deal
Break
6
my
damage
heart,
to
Hat.
3 minions. I love this card. Now note, it has to be 3 different minions, because it says 3 minions, not 3 times. If it said deal 6 damage to a minion 3 times, then it could be the same one. This says 3 minions. So, it piercing shots 3 different targets, randomly. You can trade to decide what you're hitting, but you can't hit 1 minion more than once. If they have no minions, it does nothing. If they have 1 minion, it piercing shots 1 time. So, there are scenarios where this is game-winning. There are way more scenarios where this just doesn't work. And Stika Wish asking in chat, have you tried it with Terror Scale? I haven't, because I live in the real world and not the dream world. And I appreciate the optimism there, but they have to have 6 minions for that to matter. I don't know if it
Oh,
checks
really?
death
It
rattles in the
can't-
middle. I don't think it does, but I'm not sure on that.
I mean, it casts piercing shot 3 times.
Oh,
If
so
there's
it
no
can't.
minion, then nothing happens.
Oh,
Well,
I
but
thought maybe it would be in like the same sort of time frame, so it could hit 3 minions and then hit those same 3 minions again. Because I know that with piercing shot, when you terror coil it, it hits the minion and then it's dead, and then
All right, it
it
deals
does
6 more
and
damage.
that 6 just goes.
So
to
maybe
six.
it does work with Terror Coil. I don't know. If it works the same as Piercing Shot, which it should, so maybe it can hit those same minions 3 more times. But that's still, like, a lot of work for an 8-mana spell when I can just play Altamore and kill them. Yeah. So it might shoot the same one twice. I don't know. Yeah, Steakwish, you're going to hear that a lot as well. Jackpot Rogue will love this. Uh-huh.
No.
Yeah. This card
It sure
would be
will.
much better if it cost none.
Well, 4, but yeah.
Or 2 with the Shadow Step. Or maybe they have Convoke and it costs 1. I don't
It's always Shadow Step. Shadow Step always makes this worse. Ugh.
So, but anyway, I don't know the specifics how it works. I know that it's not going to matter much because you shouldn't be doing this in your Hunter. I wish we could. Love the card. Really fun. It's not the right thing to do. It's not.
I'm gonna try a one of in Quest. We'll see how it goes.
Go ahead,
It's like
yes.
going back to like the Grand Slam, when the Grand Slam was a great mage card, but not a good hunter card.
In
Oh,
the
'cause it
deck,
costs 7.
in the deck with Furious Howl that triggers every time you play a spell. Let's throw in the 8-mana card and see what happens. Yeah.
Maybe we just pick it off Mark's shot and that's fine.
Anyways, there will be a Strolden clip where it's picked off Mark Shot and played with Raj Najjan, and it deals 1 billion damage and wins the game. I want to be there for that. I want to see that. I'm going to be happy for that person. But it's not something that you should put in your deck and try and do. All right, Steve, are you ready for Sad Boy Hours?
Oh, I'm gonna cry. Harvester of
So
Envy. My hope for this card is that card is going to be good eventually. Because we were waiting all week to see, well, what are the other priest cards going to be? Because we talked about it last week on the show. There's Drakop, there's Psychic Conjurer, and they're like Copycat, which is not a card, and Soothsayer's Caravan, which is not a card. So we got Identity Theft, which is a 3-mana shadow spell. Discover a copy of a card from your opponent's hand and deck. So it's better Thought Steal, right? That's it as far as what's actually going to get you the copied cards. Like we did get Mysterious Visitor, 2-mana, 2/3 Battle Cry, reduce the card's copy from your opponent by 2. Great. But so that makes it a little bit better. But like we had that 4-mana Elemental in Mage that discounted all the cards that didn't start in your deck. And that only got played when there were OTKs involved with like Simulacrum and stuff. Like when you're not going to be able to control what it is and you don't have that many options to copy, like I don't think you're going to really be able to run Mysterious Visitor, because I think you need to run like Mysterious Visitor makes Harvester of Envy doable because maybe you can play all those cards in one turn. But you're not running Mysterious Visitor with these few options. Like if you have to run like Psychic Conjurer in your deck, and now you have to run a Dragon deck because you have to play Draconid Operative. Don't think I'm not going to try, by the way. Like
We didn't.
that's going to happen. I'm going to
We know.
try.
We know.
I mean, I will sacrifice my MMR for the greater good, but I just like Identity Theft is a good card, but I don't think that we're playing that in the state that Priest is in right now, unless we have a payoff, and the payoff is just not good enough right now. But I mean, they did say, I saw Celeste Swan was tweeting about this in a thread, and basically they were trying to print something that they're going to be able to build on as future sets come. So like right now, this is not good. In 6 months, we might get there.
Hey, when they do the new core, they can always bring Thoughtsteal back, and then all of us will be sad in Barrens except you. And
or Devour Mind, or
that's
Devour
ambitious.
Mind.
That card costs 5.
Yeah,
It's-
but we don't pay retail for
That's
spells and proofs all
Madame
the time.
Lazul, I believe, is what we're
Oh
looking
yeah,
for here.
Madame Lazul would be good, or Curious Glimmerroot even would be fine. You know,
I
like
think
that
time
was
might have passed
okay.
our little glimmer friend by.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
might have, but like in a 4-set meta, you might be able to squeeze it in. You know, especially in a 40 card deck, you could get there. But like, but it's hard to envision being able to like run Harvester of Envy seriously without like a decent without at least as many options as Thief Rogue has, right? Like Jackpot Rogue. Like you kind of need like a Jackpot Rogue level density of steely cards in order to justify a legendary like Harvester of Envy, and I don't think we're there yet. But we could get there. Oh yeah, Chameleos, yeah. That's a card you could play too. But that you have to time that, right? Because like then you're playing Harvester of Envy like the turn that Chameleos turns into what you want it to be, which is difficult.
I am so happy to postpone the playability of this card because I really, really don't like my opponent getting copies of my stuff. So getting the actual thing is just like 10 times worse.
Yeah.
Very, very pleased that this isn't playable yet, but I hope for you, Steve, that it is playable eventually.
Yeah. It is understandably a very tilting thing. Like it's one, I mean, first of all, because the card quality of what's in your opponent deck is better than just random cards. And also like you're basically taking your opponent's stick and beating them in the head with it, which people tend not to like for some reason. I don't understand, but you know, I'm a broken human, so you know, I don't expect to.
I'm curious how they find a way to print support that makes you happy and doesn't make other people uninstall the game.
I don't think it's possible. That's why I don't know that this is going to be good. But you know, I mean, in Wild, it's a thing you could do, but I don't think you have the time to do that in Wild, really.
We'll always have Theatar.
Man, duels. There's duels. There's a time and a place for everything, and it's called duels.
That's true. And from last set, card you want to be good that isn't. Queen Ajara. I'm gonna call that a hit.
I was at least partial. That was at least a partial hit. Yeah, like it's played, but I think people thought that it was going to be in like every deck, and it's not.
That card started seeing play after they nerfed all the other decks and gave people 10 more life. So if that's what they need to do to make a card playable, I'm not giving the Queen credit.
It's he's playing specifically in decks where you need to copy the spell, right? So like Cursed Warlock, it sees play. Like in Steel in Thief Rogue, it sometimes sees play just to get the Colossal. Like it has niche use cases, but it's not like the generically good neutral legendary that people thought it was going to be before the set released.
You
She's
were
played
right
in-
until it got buffed.
She's played. Both of us were. She's played in Jackpot Rogue because Colossals. So for me, Z-Lag. I wanted to be good, but it wasn't. They made it better. I was right. And Edelweiss, cards you wanted to be good that weren't. Abyssal Curses. They made them better. You were right.
They're still borderline, but they have their place now.
And their place... Well, Steve thinks he knows. Card you think is over underrated?
Yeah. So Lady Darkfane is a card that I don't feel like people have really been talking about a lot.
What does she do? This has a lot of text on it. We should talk about it.
So 5 mana, 3/6 legendary for Warlock, Battle Cry. Summon 2/2/1 Shades. Each gains a Death Rattle to cast your last Shadow spell. So it summons 2/2/1s with a Death Rattle. They both get the same spell, which is the last Shadow spell that you cast. The Shadow spells that you want more of are generally the ones that end games. I mean, the best case scenario, which is not it's not that it's not scary in and of itself, but like the least scary scenario is Shadow Waltz, which is the 5 mana Shadow spell. Summon a 3/5 Shadow with Taunt. If a minion died this turn, summon another. Because the Death Rattle will mean that the second part always triggers. So you get 2 3/5s, and if you kill both of them off, you get 4 3/5s. That's a lot. I'm more worried about things like Abyssal Wave and Abyssal Wave will do a chain reaction, like when you throw the ping pong ball into a case full of mousetraps, where the Abyssal Wave will kill the other one, which will then go off again. So that'll be 2 more curses. Or Drag Below is just a random effect. Or Curse of Agony is another one that you can get 2 more copies of.
Forgot about
Or
that.
or Tamsin's Phylactery is another one that you could do. If you only have the 1 Death Rattle and you need more Phylacteries, you could do that also.
Right. Doesn't matter that it's random if there's just 1 Death Rattle.
Yep. I mean, at least for the first one. I guess the second one could get the Death Rattle from the first one theoretically, but the first one, if you only have, Mine or Owl or whatever your exploding thing of choice is. So
Darkbane tokens don't go into the Phylactery pool because they're granted death rattles.
Oh, right. So
they're not summoned; they're granted. So yeah, they don't go in the pool at all.
Yeah. So if like your first Phylactery wasn't enough, then you could do that, and you have that again, right? So yeah, I'm a little bit worried about that because like I hate when all those cards are cast enough times to end the game, and that gives more triggers. So yeah.
Yep. I played this card today. When I got Shadow Waltz on it, I won the game.
Yeah.
It was so good with Shadow Waltz. So crazy with Shadow Waltz. But I got it with, I think it was Abyssal Curse or Abyssal Wave another time, which was pretty good. I don't remember what I put on Darkbane, but every time I played her, she was just a lot of things. It's a lot of like numbers and effects. It's powerful. Card that I think is over or underrated. I am happy to say the cards that I think are overrated are Evolve cards. I have never been happier about Evolve cards being super mid. Because they are not good enough to make a scammy board that will win you games. The infuse evolve mechanics on convincing disguise, you need to go wide, which means your evolves aren't scammy. Whenever you're muck pooling, you're making a single minion slightly above the curve, which we're already doing in every deck in the format. Especially on Baroness Vash, it makes 5s. Okay. I saw a Goldshire Knoll once. It either bugged out or re-rolled another Goldshire Knoll, and it was fine. I don't know which, but, it's pre-release patch, so, like, that'll happen. But you can't win games by evolving into a scam and then killing your opponent. The Bloodlust deck and the Evolve deck are completely different in this expansion. The most important example of this is a card that I think does not belong in any kind of proactive Evolve deck, is Primordial Wave. Because not being able to attack after you devolve is a huge deal. A huge deal, and it costs 3 mana. It's a big chunk of your turn. So this card in a proactive full evolve list was actively poor. In a reactive control-y evolve-y shaman list, which I think we'll see play, because Gorlock Ravager is a great evolve target, and Clownfish lets you get it down sooner. So if you do turn 1 Muck Pools, turn 2 Coin Clownfish, turn 3 Gorlock Evolve it, that's a good sequence. Right? That's powerful. But Primordial Wave, you use it when you need a Mass Silence and you expect to have a School Teacher or a Gorlock Ravager or something in play. But it's incremental value. It is not a total full board scam out of nowhere. And the safety valve in this format, which is also a shaman card, is Snowfall Guardian. So, like, good luck making your giant board. Who cares? There is absolutely a Bloodlust deck. Totem Shaman is absolutely a Bloodlust deck because it also has Flesh Giants now. But this card, Primordial Wave, is not that great. And the Evolve stuff in general, it's an okay bolt-on to some other deck, but it is not a deck by itself. I am happy to say this is not going to be anywhere near the biggest scam in the format. That's called Convoke the Spirits. That's what that is.
I still think that you're just biased against this because you can't evolve into Glug.
Glug! And then, Edelweiss, you have a very Edelweiss-y card.
I do. So this is probably one of the more interesting cards in the set that I don't think I've seen anyone mention. And I suppose remains to be seen. It's going to take some real theory crafters to figure this one out. 3 mana, 0/6. Whenever another minion dies, become a copy of it. So very, very odd things you can do with this card. I think the easiest situation is if you have a cheap removal spell that you're using to deal with a larger minion, say a Shield Slam or Wicked Good. You've got that now Priest card that does damage equal to the power.
The light it burns, yeah.
Right. That plus Creepy Painting on a big threat, and suddenly you've got their big threat. That seems like pretty big tempo swing to me. But there's maybe some situations as well where you use a rush minion. I don't know how timestamps work with this thing. I would imagine that if two things die at the same time, whichever one was played earlier is the one you get, but I don't know. Maybe it prioritizes whichever minion is yours. That could be a possibility. But I think this card can do some pretty interesting stuff if you're willing to sacrifice a spot in your deck for it for some potentially high tempo swing turns.
Or in a Death Rattle deck, right? So
Yeah,
if you have a
sure.
Death Rattle deck, so if you're playing Death Rattle Druid or Death Rattle Priest potentially, like, and you want to get more Death Rattles of the same one that you've already gotten, then, you know, this could be good to, you know, you trade off the one that you have on board and then you get another one. You know, remains to be seen. It transforms the stats as well, or just the body?
You become a copy, so it's like
Become a copy,
Faceless
so
Manipulator.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except it's not dead, and the minion is dead.
Well, yes.
What a
Well, I mean, it's
weird
Nathria,
card.
so everything's dead.
But, like... Okay, that's true. I don't have a way to articulate what I'm thinking, and that was clever, so we're just going to keep going.
Okay.
This card's weird.
Yeah.
It's... Usually when I look at the words on a card, and I think about a board state, I can translate what's going to happen here. People are going to ask questions about what if creepy painting, whatever, and I'm like, I have no idea. Just play the cards and just see what happens. I have no clue. Timestamp order, probably. Maybe.
Probably.
If two things... I don't know. I don't know.
It's one of those cards you look at it and say, this is probably broken, but I don't know how to break it. Right? And then about 12 hours into the expansion, you see this all over ladder because somebody figured it out. You know, like call to arms.
If you have a question about this card, twitch.tv/edelweisstcg. Streams routinely. We'll be playing a lot of this.
Yeah, I haven't been for a little bit because bogged up in other stuff, but always whenever a new set comes out, I go in. And something I'm for sure going to try is some kind of tempo-y sort of control warrior with Remornia. Say you do your Remornia swing, and you end with it as a weapon, and then the next turn you hit their face, play this, rush in, the Remornia dies, and then you get another one. That or the Shield Slam that I mentioned earlier. I just think there's a lot of hidden potential in this card.
You know what the use case is, Hat. You play this on 10 mana with Glug, and then when they kill your Glug, you get another Glug.
I don't want the first Glug to die, but otherwise I am on board.
Or you play it with Neptulon on board. You kill the Neptulon, and then all the hands go wherever.
And then you wake up.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
So
was a nice dream.
from last set, Steve, you thought Whispers of the Deep was underrated. How do you feel about that now?
I still think it was. I think that people were kind of sleeping on that, and we had Shellfish Priest for a little while. And it was good in that deck. I mean, Shellfish, the reason it's not played is because Shellfish Priest is just, as a whole, it's not good enough. But I think that card is generally was making that deck work for a little while when it was viable. I don't think that, I mean, people weren't thinking about it at all. And so the fact that it was playable in a meta deck for a little while, I think counts.
Yeah. For me, I said that Nelly was overrated.
I mean, in fairness, we all agreed with you. So
Yep.
that wasn't just on you.
Let's just move on. I appreciate the attempt to go down with the ship, but I can own this. And Edelweiss, What card did you think was underrated in Voyage of the Sunken
I-
City?
I thought From the Depths was underrated because it discounts a lot of mana.
So how'd that work out?
Got nerfed.
Yeah. Good. And finally, our favorite section, the cards we don't understand. So, Edel, I think you actually have the most interesting one, and Steve, I think you have one of the weirdest ones, and I have two because I can do what I want. I'm running the stream. So, Edel, why don't you go first, because I want to talk about this card.
So this is just a really bizarre card. I don't know if it's sort of intended as arena, but it's 3 mana, 2/3, I believe. Basically, recruit a minion from your deck that you could play this turn.
Dinner Performer is the name of the card. I don't think we said the
Right.
name of the card.
Oh, yes, Dinner Performer. I just, because typically when you're recruiting something, what makes that effect good is pulling something ahead of the curve. Whereas this, you're pulling something behind the curve. So the
But-
most you could get is something that costs 7, unless you're a druid playing with more than 10 mana. And it pulls something, a cheaper minion from out of your deck. You can run 2 of these, but then you run the risk of the first one pulling the second one. It's just got all kinds of problems in terms of deck building that I don't understand where there would ever be a place for this.
The important thing is that it doesn't spend the mana. It pulls.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yep.
It pulls a minion that you could afford. So the best thing that I have thought of is your only
no.
minion, besides one of these that costs 3 or less, is Lady Sethino.
Uh-huh.
And then you go get her, and then you do stuff.
I was actually thinking maybe if all your 1-drops are bangers, maybe you just play this on 4 for a 1-drop. I don't know.
Or you have one card at a specific mana cost, right? That you always want to get out. So if it's Sethino and you're only 3-drop in the deck, I mean, it wouldn't work with Dinner Performer because Dinner Performer is also a 3, and you
Well, you
probably
only
run
play
2
one.
of them at that point.
It's like
Or
King's
you only
Zelda.
play one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you would only run like cards at that mana cost, then play it on a specific turn, because like targeted recruit, we've learned this lesson, right? Targeted recruit is incredibly powerful. So I could see it. I don't know what kind of use case there is, right? Like specifically, like if you're to ask me what minion do you want to get out, I could not tell you. But the fact that you could build a deck like this so that on like, or that is not, that's like, you only have like cards that cost like 3 or more, right? And you only have 1 3-drop because it doesn't specify that it's of that cost, right? So you would have to do it so that you're playing this with 6 mana, you have a 3-drop you want to get out, everything else costs more than 4. For example, I'm just, I'm figuring out like how you could do it like in real time, because I haven't given this card any thought until we were talking about it now. But and again, I'm not smart enough to figure out how to break it, but it feels like there's something breakable there.
Yeah. It's a targeted recruit that leaves you the mana left over afterwards. So I think this is what you use for if you're summoning 2s or 3s and you have something to do with it, and it's the only thing in your deck that you're getting. Specific, but like could be. This wins the Vivid Nightmare Award for someone's going to do something gross with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I could think of, if Quest Priest was not going to be completely eliminated by Steam Cleaner, like if you wanted to get like a cheap minion out of your deck because you just need to find a 4 and you don't want the 2s in your deck anymore, right? Just get the 2 out of my deck to increase the chances that I could get a 4. Like I could see that maybe. That's a less interesting scenario.
So, I have 2 cards here that I don't understand. I'm curious if either of you can help me figure these out, but I'm pretty sure that I have them figured out. Conqueror's Banner. Have either of you read this card? Have you seen it before?
I have. This was a strong contender for my picks as well. Yeah.
So, Conqueror's Banner. Reveal a card from each player's deck 3 times. Draw any of yours that cost more. It's a 2-mana warrior spell. Now, you, listener, you thought Big Warrior. And I respect that thought. I understand where you came from. Read the card again. It does not say minion. It does not say minion. Joust was always a minion. This is not that. This is reveal a card from each player's deck. So for every Shield Shatter or Giant, like a Hero Rokara you play, there's a bunch of Shield Slams in there. Because you need low-cost deck cards for your deck to function. Discard Joust 3 times with random cards. Why? Why? Not even why. Hold on. Let me back up. How?
I mean, I could tell you how you're not going to like it.
Okay.
If you're playing Kazakhstan Warrior, after you play Kazakhstan, this draws you 3 Kazakhstan cards. Most of the time.
Not even always.
Not always, but probably get you 2. I don't know that that's good enough to hold this card.
You don't know? I know that's
game.
not. So we got to play a card to make Kazakhstan treasures better. That's our game plan here. If that's the best you've thought of, then we're on the same page. This probably doesn't make the 30. This probably doesn't make the 40. I don't think this would make the 50.
I can tell you the actual use case, which is watering down school teacher.
Yes, it does make school teacher worse.
We don't even play that warrior anymore.
I mean, we don't play warrior anymore.
Well,
So,
we will.
I mean, and the warrior that we're playing is not this warrior that wants to play anything slow, right? The warrior that you're playing is hitting people with 20 attack frothing berserkers, which super doesn't want either school teacher or this.
I mean, I have a few other ideas, but yes, this is not in any of them.
Because why? If it had any kind of restriction as to what it would reveal, anything, then we could work with this. But it's just random flips. This is just Egyptian war. And there's no slapping.
Except it's less fun.
Much less fun. The other card...
And also, like, From the Depths, if you ever play From the Depths, right? Like, you're then making the cards in your deck cheaper.
Correct. This gets worse.
Yeah. So you're not playing into the deck with cheap cards, because, like, why? You're not playing into the card with expensive cards. You're trying to cheat the mana. So where is it going?
This is why I picked this card. The other card that I understand slightly more, but not much more, is Sinful Brand. It's a 1-mana Demon Hunter epic spell. It does not have a spell school. You brand a minion, target a minion. Every time it takes damage, the owner of that minion takes 2. It has to be an enemy minion. You can't hit your own. What does this do? I have heard arguments for 1/1 tokens. That is what I have heard the arguments for.
That's the whole argument. That's the entirety of the argument. We've got the Vanguard that makes 1/1 tokens, and currently the only thing we have is it's not Command Eodari, right? The
3-mana one. Coordinated Strike.
Coordinated Strike, right. We lost Command the Eodari, which was the 5 mana. It gives you 6 of them.
So you'd have to be trading with this. You have to be trading with this. The trades have to be what you want to do. And you have to not just want to play Field of Strife, which costs 2 mana and does it for all of your minions for 3 turns.
Well, no, it does the damage if they go face for 3, because it gives them plus attack. So what this is this is the inverse of Dread Prison Glaive, right? Dread Prison Glaive punishes your opponent when they play a taunt that you can kill, because then, and with multi-strike, you get to Wind Fury them. This is when they play a taunt that's too big or not the right size for your Dread Prison Glaive to kill. Then when you're trading through the taunt, you still get to go face.
Yeah, or someone makes a good point that if you play this at the start of a Sathino turn where you're having to use Sathino to hit minions, you basically get to just hit face anyway, and I think there's a pretty good argument there.
Well, large minion.
Yeah, one large minion.
One large minion.
Right. It's the Sathino argument I see, but it has to be one large minion and a whole lot of Sathinoing, because on a small minion, this might deal 4 damage. This is super scuffed multi-glaive, for sure, but you lose your minions. The point of playing multi-glaive is to not lose the minions. So this has to be a large taunt. I have to want to trade into it anyways. I have to be doing damage face with it. I have to have a bunch of minions. And if any of those are untrue, you're better off with Field of Strife or any other card. So
Well, you
I
also have that card that it's still in standard, the one that whenever one of your minions dies, deal 3 damage to a random enemy, right?
Rascal Naga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not currently enough support. If this is something sort of saying, hey, in the future we're maybe going to give more support for the Illidari Demon Hunter, then I imagine that's kind of where this is waiting for.
And then if you're playing that, right, then well, you don't really want those to hit minions, but now when you hit minions with that, it also goes face, right? It's I don't know. I'm not saying it's great. I'm just trying to think of like where it would fit.
The problem here is that if you're not dealing with a taunt, then it's bad because you just go face anyway. It never is removal. It never does anything by itself. It is the worst possible top deck in the game if you get board cleared. It's just so narrow and so specific that I'm not quite sure why it does what it does. Not really sure. Yes, spammy Arcanist. See that in chat. That's fun and cute and also unrealistic. But like we have so many ways to kill taunts. Like Multiglaive just is so much more effective here. Or Starfish. Let's play as Starfish. Something like that. So Brand is pretty narrow. This is the kind of card. If it had tradable, we have a conversation.
Oh yeah, it'd be a lot better.
Like Provoke or Overdraft. Tradable made these narrow, big splashy moments that usually don't happen into cards you could put in your deck. Because this doesn't have tradable, it's unplayable. But it's the perfect example of a card where tradable would absolutely make this design make a lot more sense. Because it's niche, and it'll be really amazing in those niches and useless most other times.
I have a quick question about this. So say you got a discounted Denathrius or something, or this discounted. How does that work? If you've super infused a Denathrius and then you Sinful Brand, their biggest minion, and Denathrius, does it take individual pings?
Yeah.
No.
It should.
No, it should not, because Denathrius is weird. Okay, I'm glad we brought this up. Denathrius is implemented differently from Cthulhu, from the old ones.
So all the damage happens simultaneously?
The way Denathrius works, he doesn't shoot missiles. He splits the assignment and then does the damage at once. So he marks and fires, but does not shoot a missile. There are other, like, I don't think we've seen Hearthstone cards that do this. But it's the kind of effect that, like, you would see in Magic the Gathering, for sure. And other games. So the total number, he splits it up and assigns it, and then does it all at once. So it only does 1 hit per target for the total amount that is randomly assigned to it.
Oh, that's that's really relevant versus Divine Shields.
And Carriel.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And Carriel. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Oh man, that actually makes me a lot lower.
And Solid Alibi too.
Yep. I would guess it is intentional for those cards to be meaningful defense here. There were a bunch of, like, a friend of mine messaged me after the theory crafting stream. He was on it too. He works for PC Gamer. And he's like, Denathrius made a lot of games feel irrelevant because I just died from 28 a lot of the time. And I think the whole point is that they wanted some kind of way to interact with that potential huge volume of damage from hand. And the implementation, when you see it in action, he just, like, pulls the anima from everything he targets in one chunk. It makes, like, flavorfully.
Yeah.
But it's different from how they've done this before. And it is specifically relevant for Divine Shields, Carriel, Solid Alibi, whatever other thing. If you have a way to mitigate how much damage you take at once, then it makes a big difference. And it won't over-damage minions, just like random missiles wouldn't. If you have a 4 health minion, there's no chance of it taking 5. Right? It caps out at 4.
So with that part, it does like Cthulhu. I mean, but Cthulhu's doing it because it's doing the damage individually one at a time. This is just reassigning it.
Yeah, I'm sure there are other effects where, like, when something is dead, it stops getting targeted by whatever. I can't think of any at the top of my head. Denathrius will never kill anything with Divine Shield Crash.
But will it assign, say you've got a 6/6 Divine Shield, will it assign it 6 damage, but that ends up just taking off the shield? Okay, so Divine Shields are great for soaking then. Because
it works like, so all damage division cards, like like Piercing Shot. We have a developer insight in the chat, so we're gonna get to that. Cards like Piercing Shot or Explosive Runes or whatever, they assign damage, assuming the text box is blank. So it doesn't matter about Divine Shield. If you have a 3/3 Divine Shield and you Piercing Shot at your opponent takes 3, and the minion survives because it splits 3. So very much like Explosive Rune. Now Surslim Sage on the design team says counterplay is cool and all, but the real reason is because the animation would take forever. That makes a lot of sense because missiles and lifesteal, it would have to pause between each one.
Yeah.
And that's-
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Lifesteal animations take a decade. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that would make Shutterwalk seem quick.
Very glad this works the way it does then.
I'm going to stick with my design-focused answer, but also that makes sense, and I'm glad that that decision was made as well.
Yes.
Because I would still be finishing a game.
I mean, that would be the most tilting thing ever, right? Like, I mean, that's why people got tilted from Shutterwalk. It wasn't that they were doing it. It's that it took 10 minutes for it to finish resolving.
It was both. Anyways.
Yeah.
Steve, you get the weirdest card. Weirder than creepy painting.
Yeah.
Weirder than anything else.
Tome Tampering, 3 mana Warlock epic spell. Shuffle 1-cost copies in your hand. Shuffle 1-cost copies of cards in your hand into your deck, then discard your hand. Why?
Yeah.
I mean, we got Suffocating Shadows, which is 3 mana, a 3-mana shadow spell. When you play or discard this, destroying a random enemy minion. That's great. That's pretty much all the discard synergy we have in standard. It's kind of like the harvest of, oh my god, it's been a long day. The Harvester of Envy, where, and maybe this is just not a card for now, right? Might be the answer. But like, I don't like, but you've done that, right? Like, you don't lose the cards, that's nice. But then your hand is empty. So now what?
You die.
Yeah, I think we touched on this maybe last episode or something, or maybe not. Maybe it was all in my head, but this card wants Hand of Gul'dan so bad, but they already printed that, and it's in Wild now. So maybe that won't be crazy enough for Wild. If that's not the case, I'm sorry, figure it out. But without being able to play this and immediately draw 1-mana cards with some kind of crazy combo, I just don't see this really functioning. You get like a little rebate if you're running something like that spell you mentioned where you blow up a minion, or I think we also have the legendary that when you discard it, you get 2 copies to your hand. Cool.
Oh, is Jeklik in core?
Yeah,
Yep.
4 mana, 3/4 lifesteal.
Oh,
They buffed it to
okay.
3/5,
Yeah.
by the way.
Okay. I'd
All right.
rather they would have buffed it to
I mean,
3
that's
3
one
mana.
card in 30 or 40, right? Like, you have to have that in your hand when you play this in order
I mean,
to get
this is
value
a
out of it.
combo card. Let's be clear. This wants you to have like some amount of card draw in your hand and an OTK, and then you discard
Sure.
all that stuff so they're 1 mana, and you hope you hit the card draw first so that you can draw the rest of it and kill them. But that seems optimistic unless you're getting the card draw immediately. So without Hand of Gul'dan, I just don't see it.
Or Malkazar's Imp would be fine. Like, anything that just let you draw off of that.
Malkazar's Imp. Malkazar's Imp is what they're going to do in Wild, not Hand of Gul'dan.
Yeah. I mean, well, they might do
But
both. It might
They
be
do
why
just
not both,
fine
but
in
yeah.
Wild already. Like,
Yeah.
they don't need this in Wild. It's Supreme Archaeology Warlock would have thought about this.
Oh, yeah.
To get a 1-mana Malagos in your deck, but also it would have died to Demon Hunter, so. Because you discard your hand.
Any giants just cost 0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The main problem, the card is powerful. The main problem I see is that you discard your hand when you play it, which is kind of fundamental to the card. And I imagine discarding your hand probably loses you most games. Because 3 mana discard your own hand.
I mean, unless your hand is empty, which is the reason you're playing the 4 mana 7/7 in Demon Hunter.
But
But
this cares
that's-
about the cards that are. If your hand is
this
empty,
card's really this actually wants you to discard the cards, right? Because
Right.
like
Yeah.
if you're not discarding the cards, what are you doing with your life? Like the whole point of it is to get the 1 cost in. So yeah, obviously like it's a combo enabler to get the 1 cost versions in, but like how do you do that and not die without some really powerful discard synergy that we don't have right now?
I may have been
Yeah.
too dry earlier. I think this card is unplayably bad and will lose you every game you cast it. It's because it's 3 mana, discard your own hand.
Yes. So until there is something where discarding your hand immediately draws you again, such as if they put Malchazar's Imp in core next year, I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
Because that will be absurd. I mean, you can go turn 4, Malchazar's Imp, Tome Tampering. Any giants that you shuffle in and then draw will just be 0 and go immediately into play. Doesn't matter how much they would have cost.
Yeah. This will be Supreme Archaeology Warlock without Supreme Archaeology. You don't even need it anymore, right? Because I mean, that's you wait till you draw the stuff that you actually want to discount, and then you shuffle it in, and you're happy.
I'm happy
But
when
yeah,
my opponent plays this card.
Yeah. So this might not be a now thing, and it could be powerful eventually. I mean, you could see where it would be powerful, but just like right now, what are you doing?
I don't see how it would be powerful in the other situation either, unless you're really fortunate with a hand of Gul'dan. Really, really fortunate.
I mean,
It's-
Jeklik, if you have enough mana, would get you some defense in the meantime. I guess.
You have to
I'm
pay
being
for the Jeklik.
I'm being super generous right now. I'm being like philanthropically generous right now.
Malchazar's Imp is the only thing that makes sense to me because you get
Yeah.
all like as
Then
many
there's
cards
no
back.
downside. Yeah.
So anyways, old school Magic players out there, you've been around for 20 years? Ones with nothing. Yeah. So 1 with nothing was a card where you paid 1 mana to discard your hand, and that was the sum text of the card. But this gives you ones, so it's ones with nothing.
Yeah. But Magic also had like a graveyard and graveyard synergies.
The card was unplayable in Magic and was the butt of a joke to this day, in fact. So, it's just throwing away your own cards is bad in the card game.
Turns out.
So anyways.
That's the takeaway you can take from this episode. Throwing away your own cards is bad.
So, cards from last set, before we wrap up. Card that you didn't understand, Steve, was Volcanomancy. I think we figured out a little bit, but yeah.
Mostly because Adel took mine, so yeah. But yeah.
Edelweiss had Fires of Zinajari.
Another fire card. That was the 2 mana replace your deck with big minions that it sets them to 5 cost. Okay.
Is this for Banner? Turn
No,
4,
because-
Fires Banner.
It sets them to 5. You're not even
Okay.
guaranteed to draw the big stuff.
Man, they're both so
5 isn't
bad.
even that high. It's really bad.
And then you play Riot and they all kill the thing in front of them. We figured it out.
And then the card I didn't understand, which was a meme answer of Swordfish. I didn't understand why it has 3 durability. And then Pirate Rogue ended up only being good in Wild. It was okay in Standard for like a minute. And then they nerfed Druid and the meta stabilized. So, pretty good guesses for the last one. And I'm really excited for this set. But we had a 30-minute interview prior to this, and we're coming up on 2 hours of the recorded episode, which means this is a long episode again. Everyone, thank you so much for being here. But we're going to wind down the show now. So, we have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website, coincade.com. Find our contact info, our show notes, and our patron information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/coincade. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coincade.com. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coincade.com. Or into our email, coincade@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at coincade. Like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/coincade. If you'd like some CC swag, head over to our shop at shop.coincade.com. Big thanks to our producers Number Theory, Doja K, Proby1, Kresh, Cat, Beef Squatch, David P, Faded Black, Walu, Jeremy T, Bottle Caps, and Lucky. Thank you so much to Cakes Infamous, Grey Lego, Robitussin, and Eddie Van Cleve for their subs during the show. Coin Concedes, Edelweiss, you got a good one.
So my coin concede is to Abar, who reached out to me a while back to ask if I wanted to cast GMs, and I said yes, absolutely. And Yeah, we're starting this weekend. So by the time everyone is listening to this, I imagine it will have already been going for a little bit, but you can go back and check out the VODs on YouTube.
Steve?
So I'm going to coin concede to Dragon Rider for a couple of reasons. First of all, because she messaged me the other day and said, "Hey, do you have a code to give away for a bundle?" And I said, "No, I don't." And she said, "Now you do." So I will be doing that on my stream, one of my streams next week. I haven't figured out which one yet, but you will see that on my Twitter. And also because she and Daring Alkaline had me on Doctor 3 last night, kind of last minute, or Tuesday night, but it just got posted last night, where we talked about some more cards, and I talked about a little bit about my origin story, which, most of you have probably heard if you've been following me for a while, but some of you might not have. So you can go listen to that. And also to Major Death, who is the reason that I was subbing in last minute, and hope you get better, buddy, because it sounds like he is still not still kind of sick, going on several weeks, and hopefully that that gets better soon. But thinking of you and hoping that you get better soon.
That reminds me, I should quite concede to Dragon Rider as well, because she helped me with a little bit of practice, so I wouldn't be quite as much of a ball of nerves going into this weekend.
Oh, don't worry, that came up on the episode too.
Oh, okay, cool.
It only nice things. You'll actually like listening to it, I think.
Good.
All right. So, and I would like to coin concede, well, I don't know. Blizzard for including me in the theory crafting. Coin concede to Joss for hanging out with me all day. And it was a lot of fun to co-pilot. Coin concede to everyone for showing up and in the stream. Coin concede to Raven, Lorinda, and Soddle for TheoryCast for joining in, having a good time watching. And I bullied Soddle into following me on Twitter, so Soddle, thank you for that. He said he was going to yell at me if I didn't go for lethal in one turn. And I responded by saying, well, since I won, give me that follow. He did it on
But then he
the
tried
air.
to send you to Blizzard jail right after that.
That is true. It was a press deck. It was a press deck. It's okay. It's not my fault. And also, I'd like to coin concede to Edelweiss for uploading her audio. So, that's going to do it for our show this week. Keep calm and watch Last Call tomorrow. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
Outro music. All right. Stopped recording. Everyone, thank you so much for being here. We can go raid someone that's theory crafting right now, because that's still happening.
Oh, yeah. This is so interesting.
Clark.
I spaced it
We're
out.
gonna raid
Yeah, I
Clark.
was going to suggest Clark too. Yeah.
So, let's go hang out with Clark.
Dash Pass by DoorDash.
Why?
It's got everything
Oh,
I
God,
need
this
from the
is making
neighborhood this summer.
South. Okay. Did that come through? Did you hear
I
that?
don't see any. No, I didn't hear anything.
Yeah. I didn't hear
Okay,
the
good.
outro stuff either.
I got a dash pass, DoorDash, something. Advertisement.
Hibachi.
Stream heard it. All right. Go say hi to Clark. See y'all later. Thanks for being here.
Bye.
Ugh.